This is a recap of House of Chains by Steven Erikson, Malazan Book of the Fallen, Book 4. Prologue. The nascent. Countless putrefying, gray, bloated bodies line the shoreline of the nascent in the Warren of Shadow. They are the former inhabitants of the drowned city lying offshore, flooded by a great river that had temporarily crossed the rent between worlds. Now only a huge wall 30 paces across and stretching into the distance barely holds back the water and its lifeless flotsam from the rest of Shadow. The Teast-Eater, Trollsingar, is dragged along the top of the wall by his brothers, and his bruised and battered body is chained by his wrists and ankles to a set of iron rings on the wall. Then his mouth is muzzled and the shorning begins. A symbol is carved into his forehead and then rubbed in ash. His long single braid is hacked off and an unguent is smeared into his scalp to kill his remaining hair. He is an outcast. To his family and his people he has never existed. For a crime he has not committed. Afterwards, his brothers stand over him. One brother speaks. They agree that Trull has betrayed him. That he claimed this brother betrayed his own people and served a hidden master. Does he not understand that their enemies have fallen before them? This brother asks. Does he not understand the sacrifices that have been made? Worse, did he not call their enemies the pure kin and forbid their deaths? Trull has betrayed them all. Thus Trull is no more. The brothers leave and Trull is alone with the lapping water and the feeding crabs. He thinks that soon the water will rise over the wall, and he will drown. But so will his brothers and his people, in a sense. Like the rent-driven water, they have shattered nature's balance. And nature does not abide in imbalance. Part 1. Faces in the Rock. Chapter 1. Later in Plateau, Urid lands centuries ago. In the time before the seven gods had opened their eyes, a loyal guard dog of the Urid lands of the Lateran Plateau turns without warning on those it had once protected. It savages a child and kills a woman and an old man before the Urid warriors can bring it down with their spears. The dying boy is carried to the glade of the Faces in the Rock by his father, and left lying alone beneath the carven visages of the seven gods of the Tebler. It is not a surprise when the boy dies soon thereafter, as he is too young to pray. Karsa Orlong, a young Tebler warrior, glories in the tales of his grandfather Pok, who had long ago slipped unseen through the lands of their neighboring rival clans to raid the rich farmlands of Silver Lake. Pok's longhouse is still decorated with the ears and other trophies of those he had slain and ravaged. Karsa and his grandfather are ashamed of Karsa's father, Synyg, as he did not venture out in raids as Pok had. Nonetheless, Synyg did train Karsa in combat, and raise him to be one of the clan's mightiest warriors. Karsa aims to be more like his grandfather than his father, and plans to travel to Silver Lake to recapture the former glory of the clan through conquest. Before he sets out with two companions, Delam Thord and Byroth Gilb, Karsa visits the Faces in the Rock and vows to bring glory to the Urid clan's god Urigal by slaughtering legions of children in his name. He aspires to win the right to marry Dalis upon his return, after proving his worth in combat. Dalis, however, has given her blessing to Byroth, but Karsa is not concerned about his competition, as Byroth is a follower while he, Karsa, is a true leader. After Karsa leaves the glade, 7 terribly disfigured entities rise from the ground. These 7 had been sentenced by their kin to spend eternity in an underground crypt for a dishonorable failure they were responsible for. The sentence was cut short after some outside intervention where the 7 had but to break a vow and swear fealty to another. Their new master has freed them from their tombs, but more will be required to allow them to leave the glade. Uriel states that Karsa will suffice to achieve their plans. Sinbiala is skeptical, reminding Uriel that Karsa's grandfather was also supposed to have sufficed but failed. Uriel says that if Karsa fails, they will turn to Dalis' unborn child, of whom Byroth is the father, and whom Emroth is nurturing in Dalis' womb. Karsa returns home to find Synyg grooming his horse, Havoc. Karsa asks where his own horse is, and Synyg replies that his horse is not ready and gives Karsa Havoc instead. Karsa then asks for his father's blessing, which Synyg refuses and points out that Pok has already blessed Karsa, and that should suffice. Karsa leaves to join his companions who are waiting for him. As the three ride through the village, Karsa notes that nobody is out to observe their departure, as the clan elders disapprove of the journey. Karsa feels he is being watched nonetheless. The three are indeed observed by 23 silent witnesses, former siblings who were sacrificed to the Tebler god Sabal. One of the watchers comments that only one of them will return. Pok visits his son, and angrily demands to know if he gave Karsa his blessing. Synyg invites Pok in for a meal, and Pok is surprised to discover that Synyg gave Karsa his horse Havoc. The two share words of contention over supper, after which Synyg kicks Pok out of his house and vows to kill him the next time he returns. Journey through Tebler lands. Karsa and his friends head toward the lands of rival Tebler clans, the Rathid and the Sunid, on their way to Silver Lake. Karsa conveys his intent to avoid stealth and ride openly through the lands, slaying all who get in the way in order to gather souls. Byroth disagrees and mocks Karsa, but reassures Karsa that he will follow him. The trio discover a group of unsuspecting Rathid who are oblivious to their presence. They hide their horses while plotting their next move. Karsa attacks, leaving his companions behind. He slays all but one youth, who escapes. Byroth complains that the youth escaped, but Karsa tells him it was an intentional diversion. Now the youth will describe 3 warriors on foot, and the Rathid will not be expecting mounted warriors, and thus limit the range in which they will search for the invaders. Byroth warns that the youth will grow up to become a warrior and an enemy of the Urid. Karsa dismisses this concern, vowing that the Rathid war leader will bow before him one day. Karsa reveals his plan to harry the Rathid, pretending to be Sunid raiders, and lead the pursuing Avengers to the neighboring clan of Sunid, starting a war between the two rival clans. Karsa anticipates that the Rathid will mount a hunting party to retaliate against the invaders and that the Rathid's village will be undefended except for the elderly, women, and children. They indeed find the village undefended and quickly kill all the children and elderly villagers. They then round up the women for sexual conquest. As Delam and Byroth are having the women of the village, Karsa meets with the chief's wife. He does not believe the woman's recollection of Pok begging passage through their lands. Karsa takes the chief's wife in the chief's own bed before taking the chief's daughter last. He leaves both of them with child. An hour's ride beyond the village, they encounter a pack of Rathid dogs. Karsa subdues the pack's leader, naming it Naw. With Naw at his side, the pack is now submissive and loyal to the trio. The Urid warriors then happen upon one of the Rathid hunting parties, who are quickly slaughtered by the word. Chapter 2. Tebler lands. Karsa, Byroth, and Delam decide to avoid the other Rathid villages, concerned they may be weighed down with too many trophies by the time they reach Silver Lake. Inside a cave, they discover glyphs chiseled in the stone wall in the Tebler language. The glyphs describe a group whose blood has become cloudy, being hunted by Clan Amass, and the author's plan to return the hunted group to ancient ways of legends, mentioning by name some of the present-day Tebler clans. As they press farther into the valley of the Sunid, they find the villages long abandoned. They realize that the lowlanders have driven the Sunid from their lands. The 3 Urid change their mission to one of vengeance for the Tebler. That night, they discuss the meaning behind the glyphs found in the cave. Byroth says the Tebler are a fallen people. Before reaching Silver Lake, they discover a huge flat slab of stone with a blue-green hand sticking out from underneath. The hand moves when approached and Karsa concludes that it is a demon pinned there for eternity. Byroth advises to free the demon, which they do after some deliberation. The demon then spontaneously attacks Karsa. Delam, who intervenes, is thrown down by a blow to the forehead. The demon identifies herself as a Forkrel Assail named Calm. In a show of gratitude for being freed, Calm tells Karsa that he has been chosen but refuses to tell for what purpose. She then leaves. Delam's skull is cracked and clear thought blood is seen leaking out of his head. Karsa comments on how nobody recovers once thought blood leaks out. As they travel, Delam moves with the dogs and starts to behave as if he were one. Karsa and Byroth begin to argue after Byroth states that he does not intend to follow Karsa anymore. When Byroth informs Karsa that he and Dalis are lovers and she carries his child, Karsa vows to denounce her for sleeping with a man out of wedlock and to take her as a slave. Upon hearing this, Bairoth attacks Karsa, but the dogs intervene and attack Bairoth savagely. Karsa calls off the dogs when he hears someone approaching, and the fight is put aside. They see a group of lowlander priests and guards, and Karsa attacks them. To the shock of the 4 mages among the group, Karsa walks through their magical fire unscathed and slaughters them all, save for one of the guards who flees. Bairoth agrees to follow Karsa from then on. Silver Lake. They press hard towards Silver Lake, hoping to beat the lone survivor so he cannot raise the alarm ahead of them. After a perilous trek down a steep staircase made of bones, they finally reach Silver Lake. They are surprised to discover that the rich farm of Pawk's stories is now a walled town. Undaunted, they charge the town, attacking anyone within reach and gaining access into the town's walls. Karsa, Bairoth, Delim, and the dogs slaughter scores of lowlanders before both of their mounts are killed by pikemen. In the assault, Karsa and Bairoth are separated. Karsa witnesses Delim being slain. Naw is injured and Karsa hides him in a barn. In his pursuit of one lowlander, the unpopular town factor who attacked Naw with a mattock, Karsa jumps down from a raised platform. He kills the factor, but the floor gives way. Karsa falls into the cellar below, and is impaled on a spike of wood. He is forced to surrender, and is captured. When Karsa mentions the name of his grandfather, the guard who fled the previous night, Damask, reveals the truth behind Pawk's stories and how Pawk arrived at Silver Lake on the brink of death a few centuries earlier. He was taken in by the early settlers and nursed back to health. When Pawk's health was restored, he killed almost all of them and fled back to the Tebler lands. The Lowlander tells Karsa that they know all about the Urid from the Sunid slaves they have taken and plan on enslaving them eventually as well. Many of the Lowlanders are identified as Malazans, who have an army company visiting the town. A new Lowlander arrives, a slaver named Master Silger, who says he has a lesson prepared for Karsa. Karsa is led to an area where Bairoth is badly wounded and bound against a wheel. They attempt to extract details about the Urid but then kill Bairoth when he refuses to give any information. Bairoth dies sneering the words, "Lead me, war leader!" Karsa is told that he will be spared only to become a slave. Karsa is thrown in a slave pit, chained to a tree trunk. There he meets another prisoner named Torvald Nam from Daruhistan. Karsa manages to work himself free from his bonds, frees Torvald, and the two make their escape. Torvald suggests a direction to flee, but Karsa states his intentions to stay and enact vengeance upon the Lowlanders, providing a diversion for Torvald. Karsa is soon captured by Kord's squad of Malazans with the use of a net enchanted by the squad mage, Ebrin. Normally used to snare and stun Denrabi, the net should kill a normal man, but Karsa is merely subdued by it, and even soon feels its power lessening. The leader of the Malazans, Captain Kindly, informs Silger that Karsa is now a prisoner of the Malazans for his crimes during his assault. When the slaver attempts to buy the Tebler from the Malazans, Kindly has him and Damask arrested for bribery. Karsa is reunited with Torvald, now in Malazan captivity after he was also apprehended. Chapter 3. Between Silver Lake and Culvin. The Malazan soldiers of Silver Lake load Karsa Orlong onto a wagon, which already contains Torvald Nam. They are to be sent to 7 cities to work in the Imperial mines. One Malazan, Shard, notices that the magic subduing Karsa is weakening. Ebrin is incredulous that the net of fire did not kill the Tebler 3 days ago. The mage orders Karsa to be restrained with heavy chains. Once the enchanted net is removed, Karsa attempts to break free but is struck on the head with a shovel and knocked unconscious. Karsa awakens 6 days later, bound to the floor of the wagon in chains. He recalls how Delim lost his wits after a blow to the head and tells Torvald of his intention to pretend to have brain damage in order to deceive the Malazan guards. Torvald agrees to play along on the condition that Karsa will help him escape. And not kill him immediately after. Arriving at Culvin, the Malazans are excitedly talking about the fall of Pale and how they wish they could have been present instead of being stationed in a remote outpost. They take a ferry to cross a river and load Karsa, still chained to the wagon. Weeks of traveling follow with Karsa beginning to lose his sanity from being chained and immobilized for so long. He is drifting in and out of consciousness. Malin Sea and Meningal Ocean. Eventually, at Tanis, they are put onto a ship to cross the Malin Sea, to the city of Malantias, then on to Genebaris. Here they are transferred to a huge vessel ready for the Meningal Ocean. Despite the fact that he is still chained to a platform, the new crew is afraid of Karsa, which Torvald uses to intimidate them before he is struck down by the captain and threatened to be thrown overboard if he causes any more trouble. The captain orders Karsa to stop smiling, but Karsa does not comply, either because he's still pretending to be brain damaged, or he really is losing his mind. The captain orders Karsa gagged. Karsa finds himself standing, in spirit only, before the 7 gods, telling Urigal that he has failed them. Urigal agrees, saying, "You have abandoned us, and so in turn we must abandon you." Then Karsa finds himself atop a hill made of bones with hundreds of chains stretched out from his wrists, each connected to a corpse, all climbing toward him chanting, "Lead us, war leader." He awakes screaming, back on the ship at sea, but hears a small voice saying, "Perhaps we will not abandon you yet." Torvald removes the gag from Karsa's mouth, allowing him to breathe. Torvald tells Karsa that he had been semi-conscious for weeks, hardly holding down any food or drink. Karsa looks up to see the sky flashing colors and chains snapping down through the clouds. The ship had been becalmed for some time until Karsa started screaming, and now the sailors believe that Karsa has called the storm upon them, and tried to throw him, still chained, overboard. Karsa then sees chains snapping down from the sky before he loses consciousness. The nascent. Karsa awakes to Torvald climbing onto the Tebler's platform as it floats in the water. The storm destroyed the ship, killing all of the sailors, and Torvald has been scavenging supplies that have floated up from the wreckage. Torvald believes Karsa was responsible for the storm, as not one chain of lightning missed its target amongst the Malazans. As they drift, Torvald works to free Karsa from his chains, but lacks the tools to effectively do so. The ocean they are in does not seem to be familiar, as it is fresh water, albeit silted. Torvald talks of how Silger said they had entered a warren before the ship was destroyed. Eventually they float toward a group of ships stranded on underwater sandbars. As Torvald walks in the waist-deep water, he describes many corpses from a battle at his feet. In one of the ships, Torvald finds a chisel and frees Karsa from his chains. Despite being freed, Karsa is still too weak to leave his platform and board one of the ships, until a group of massive carnivorous catfish approach and attempt to eat him. With great effort he pulls himself off of the platform, just as it is destroyed by a catfish. Torvald is able to harpoon a catfish which drags their boat into the side of one of the larger vessels. Karsa kills the catfish for food before passing out again. He awakens and they board a small dory which Torvald has found. They take turns manning the oars for several days and Karsa grows strong again. Eventually, they spy a wall running along a beach on the horizon. A ship like the ones they found stranded earlier bears down on them. A rope is lowered and they soon find themselves amongst the ship's gray-skinned warriors. Also on deck is a pile of black-skinned severed heads whose eyes shift towards Karsa. The 16 warriors command Karsa and Torvald to kneel, but Karsa refuses. As the angry gray-skinned warriors reach for their swords, Karsa draws his own and kills them all. Then he fights his way into the ship's cabin where a mage's attempt to strike him with sorcery sputters. The Tebler impales the man with a harpoon through the chest. Below deck, Torvald discovers the oarsmen are missing their heads. They deduce the bodies and heads are Tist and Eye and return to their dory. Once they are out of sight, the faces of the rock arise from the slime on the ship behind them. Some voice concerns that Karsa is leaving their control, while others argue that they just need to set their chosen warrior on the proper current. Karsa and Torvald reach the beach and discover it is actually a mass of trees, grass, and other detritus, as if the wreckage of an entire land had drawn up alongside the wall. A current is pulling them toward a breach in the wall. Near the breach is the wreck of another boat bearing Master Silger and his men, Damask and Borg. Karsa moves to kill Silger, but is persuaded by the others that the slave master, being a mage, might get them out of the warren they are trapped in. They near the breach in the wall, which is actually a portal Silger can use to take them out. As they pass the portal, The dory is destroyed and Boreg has his legs shorn off below the knees by the gates closing. They travel through darkness, and then into water. Torvald spots a light in the distance, and they all swim towards it, Boreg on Karsa's back. A large shark attacks Boreg's body, and Karsa draws his sword, slays the fish and recovers Boreg's corpse. They reach the shore and Karsa and Torvald part from Silger and Damis to head toward a tower, the source of the light. At the tower, they meet a man, seemingly Napin, known only as Keeper, who refuses to reveal his true identity. The man has spent years excavating fossils and recreating the skeletons of long-extinct animals. Karsa insults him for wasting his life, and the man strikes the Tebler, breaking several ribs. The man informs Karsa and Torvald that they are on the Seven Cities' northern coast near the Otateral Sea and the city of Erliton. They decide to head toward Erliton and part ways, as the Keeper senses that there are mysterious powers influencing Karsa's path, and it is dangerous to be around him. Keeper gives the two a significant amount of money before they head off toward the port city. Chapter 4. Coastal Road, Arath Forest. As they travel through the Arath Forest, Karsa and Torvald hear rumors of a rebellion mounting in 7 cities against the Malazan occupiers. When they enter a village, they sense something is amiss and fear they are walking into an ambush. They are soon caught by a small army of Iraq tribesmen armed with recurved bows. Seeing as they are unarmored, the two men realize they stand no chance against the archers. Instead of fighting to the death, as he would have done in the past, Karsa unslings his blood sword and surrenders. They are shackled by the Iraqs, and Karsa's shackles are so tight, they cut off the circulation to his hands and feet. Silger and Damask appear. The slaver is leading the Iraq and promises to get repayment from Karsa for losing his men and for his arrests by the Malazans. The Iraqs make camp that night with their shackled prisoners, when Torvald stuffs his and Karsa's clothes with dry grass and kicks them into a nearby campfire, sending up flames that can be spotted for miles around. The Iraqs quickly try to quench the fire, muttering the word, growl, with fear. As one Iraq cuts Torvald's throat as punishment for the fire, a group of growl attacks the camp. Silger and Damask escape, taking Karsa with them through a warren, leaving Torvald writhing on the ground. Erliton. They exit the warren in Erliton, where Silger orders Karsa's shackles removed since the town is controlled by the Malazans and slavery is outlawed unless the slave bears a criminal brand. The return of blood to his hands and feet causes Karsa blinding pain. The trio are approached by Malazan soldiers who demand to see Karsa's slave brand. Karsa soon passes out from the pain in his hands. As Karsa regains consciousness, he discovers that Silger and Damask have been put in the stocks for illegal slavery. Karsa is still in the captivity of the Malazans though. They have been told by Silger of his crimes against the Malazans in Silver Lake and plan on sending him to the Otateral mines. Karsa shares his confines with a blue-eyed stranger, another prisoner who is also destined for the mines. The two agree it would be mutually beneficial to watch out for each other in the mines. That night, Torvald appears with a group of Graal and agents of the House of Nam, and they help the prisoners escape. Torvald explains that the Graal spared his life and even helped heal his injury in return for a ransom. The blue-eyed man leads Karsa from the Malazan compound to the ruins atop the Genraub, a flat-topped hill in the city's center, where a rebel named Mibra watches over a secret tunnel by which the two leave the city. Pampotson Odin. The next day, Karsa and the blue-eyed man hide from searchers on horseback in the rocky badlands of the Pampotson Odin. The blue-eyed man believes Mibra has betrayed them. When they are unable to throw off their pursuers, he concludes there is a mage among them. Karsa voices his intent to attack after dark. At nightfall, the two escapees spy upon their pursuers' camp. In addition to 15 Malazan soldiers are Silger and Damask, who apparently bribed their way out of the stocks. It is Silger who has been contributing his skills to the hunt. Karsa attacks. In the melee, the Tebler kills several before the rest flee. When Silger's magerie fails and he attempts to surrender, Karsa cuts off his hands and feet, then drags him away, promising a slow and painful death for his enslavement of the Tebler people. 8 days later the blue-eyed man brings them to the edge of the desert Raraku. Karsa carries the semi-conscious Silger on his shoulder, and eyes the desert skeptically. The man says the one he serves is in the desert's heart, and will surely be interested in a Tebler. Karsa asks why his people's name, Tebler, amuses the man. The man tells him. Amuse? More like appalls. The Fen had fallen far from their past glories, yet they remembered enough to know their old name. You cannot even make that claim. Your kind walked this earth when the clan Amass were still flesh. From your blood came the Barghast and the Trell. You are Thelaman Tablakai. He then names himself Leoman, servant of Shaik, the chosen one to whom he will deliver Karsa at the heart of the desert. Karsa says he is no one's servant, but follows Leoman onward. Part 2, Cold Iron. Chapter 5. Arin. Blistig and Gamut. Fist Gamut of Adjunct Tavor Paran's Malaz 14th Army observes as Commander Blistig sends his soldiers bursting into a tavern. The Fist serves as the adjunct's liaison with the survivors of the chain of dogs. Soon Blistig's soldiers reappear carrying a drunken Squint, the archer who killed Colton to end his suffering. Gamut complains about the lack of discipline among the Aran soldiers. Blistig reminds him of the anger among his soldiers at being forced by High Fist Pormquil's orders to stand by and watch Colton and the chain of dogs get slaughtered by their pursuers just outside the walls of Aran. Blistig also voices some doubts concerning the newly promoted Gamut's leadership abilities, to which Gamut reminds him that he is a 23-year veteran of the 4th Army and the Wiccan Wars. Before parting, Gamut informs Blistig that Adjunct Tavor has called a meeting of all commanders that night. A transport vessel carrying new recruits to the 14th Army approaches Aran. Aboard, a new Malazan recruit named String stands at the rail and watches Aran grow closer, thinking how little it has changed since he last saw it. He is soon joined by the arrogant noble-born Lieutenant Reyno, who hints at his suspicions that Strings is a Malazan deserter based on his age and the recruiting officer's insistence that Strings be promoted to sergeant. Strings replies by saying he has met plenty of deserters and they all have their different reasons for leaving but share one thing in common: deserters do not end up putting themselves back into enlistment lines. Strings wanders back to his fellow Marines where he is approached by new recruit Korik, a Seti half-blood. Korik asks how he got his name, to which Strings replies that the tale is too long. It is revealed to the reader, however, that Strings used to go by the name of Fiddler. Lastara Yil. Lastara Yil, a captain of the Red Blades, awaits someone in Dancer's Tavern. She has received an unsigned message to meet there, but she irritatedly suspects it is from Pearl. Pearl arrives with a bottle of wine of his own vintage, and invites her to a meeting that night with Adjunct Tavor. The adjunct has approved his request that she serve as his aide for an official matter, and the meeting will allow both of them to learn the details. Lastara is enraged to be taken away from the Red Blades until Pearl informs her the mission requires a knowledge of 7 cities as well as an unquestioned loyalty to the Malazan Empire. Under further questioning, Pearl excitedly admits he has no idea what the mission entails. Gamut. All but Tavor arrive early to the meeting of the 14th Army's leadership. Present are Gamut, Admiral Nock, Commander Teen Baralta of the Red Blades, and Blistig. As Gamut waits for the adjunct to arrive, his doubts rekindle. He knows that his promotion to Fist of her army was not based on merit, but more on her familiarity with him in the role of administrator of House Paran. He fears she plans to use him in an identical manner as a Fist. Tavor arrives and immediately begins reorganizing the leadership of the 14th Army. Fist Gamut will lead the 8th Legion. Blistig and Baralta are each promoted to Fist, and they are put in charge of the 9th and 10th Legions, respectively. The survivors of the Chain of Dogs will have their units dissolved and they will be reassigned and dispersed throughout the 3 legions. Nock is to detach Commander Allardus from his flagship to take over command of the Aran Guard. Announcing she will review the troops in 3 days, she dismisses Blistig, Baralta, and Nock, but orders the last to remain available for a private meeting later that evening. She remains alone with Gamut and they talk together, speculating about how the previous meeting attendees will organize their forces. She agrees that Blistig may have Captain Caneb. Nil, Nether, and Temel then enter the room. Tavor informs the 2 dispirited and bedraggled mages that the 14th Army lacks mages so they must serve. They try to refuse, telling her that the warlock spirits within them are silent. She tells them they will have to find a means of reawakening them. Tavor informs Temel that he is to serve as captain of the 40 remaining Wiccans, who will be attached to her personal entourage as bodyguards. They are then dismissed. Tavor takes Gamut into a different room and asserts, "In this room, the Empress is not present." Subsequently, Pearl and Lastara enter. When Pearl mentions he is on the outs with both the Empress and Topper, Tavor hints that he would then possibly be available for a more private enterprise. Lastara is made uneasy by this trend in the conversation, but the adjunct assures her that nothing that follows will impugn the Red Blade's honor. But Gamut too is worried. Tavor asks Pearl about the Talon, forcing him to admit the group still exists despite the Claw's attempts to eradicate it. She piques Pearl's interest by suggesting the Talon has been working for the nobility, offering the name of Bodan as an example. But she believes Bodan's mission has gone terribly wrong. At this, Gamut connects the dots and lets slip the name, Felison. Pearl asks when Tavor lost contact, and Tavor states that it was the night of the uprising at Skullcup. She offers Pearl and Lastara a scroll with more details and contacts, asking them to find Felison. Find my sister. Gamut vividly remembers Unta on the night of the Cull of the Nobility, when he had only 12 guards to protect the Piran estate where Felison was hiding after her parents had already been arrested and taken. 3 of those guards had only been hired in the last few days, and uncertain of their loyalty, Gamut had dismissed them. But Bodan, calling himself Colin, had refused to leave. His natural military bearing led Gamut to suspect the guard was in the employ of the Empress, but Bodan confided that he was working under Tavor's orders to keep Felison safe. Gamut had been suspicious of Bodan's intentions as Tavor had done nothing to save her parents from the culling, to which the guard said that the adjunct's options were limited, given the scrutiny she was under. He had told Gamut that Felison was to spend a brief time in the Otaro mines with himself as her guardian, but that it was impossible to protect her from all harm. Bodan had then told Gamut to escort Felison to a safe house on the Avenue of Souls. Gamut had grimaced knowing that meant judgments round and the chains. Lastara yield. After Tavor and Gamut depart, Pearl and Lastara remain alone in the meeting room. Pearl is studying the scroll given by Tavor, but Lastara is initially refusing to do the job. Pearl says that is her choice, but he will have to kill her. She asks Pearl since when is he at the adjunct's beck and call, to which he replies, ever since she unequivocally reasserted her loyalty to the Empress. Lastara does not understand, so Pearl explains that the Talon have been working with the nobility to return the nobles to positions of power. Now that Tavor has taken on the role of adjunct, she had just severed her old loyalties by giving up the talons to the Claw. Once they find Bodan, they can then unravel the entire organization. And if Pearl eliminates the Talon, he will be back in the good graces of the Empress and the Clawmaster. Lastara agrees to take the mission. Gamut. Tavor and Gamut meet with Nock at midnight. Nock informs Tavor that a certain transport ship she had previously asked about, the ship containing Pormko's treasure, had sunk in the Malaz city harbor with no survivors. Tavor is skeptical at Nock's suggestion that sharks ate everyone who went over the side, but the Admiral knows of a dozen other ships in the same harbor that meet that example. Tavor interrupts with the name of the Twisted, Kelland's flagship, which mysteriously disappeared the night after the assassinations of Kelland and Dancer, and allegedly sank, taking all aboard down with it. Before Nock can reply, Tavor interrupts and notes that only Nock and 3 others are left, among the assassinated Emperor's original supporters, the other 3 being Taishran, Dijek, and Whiskey Jack. The adjunct bluntly asks of Nock why so many of the Emperor's people abandoned the Empress upon her ascension to the throne. Nock says the answer to her question lies in the history of how Kelland's family came to be. Nock points out that Kelland started out with just one partner, Dancer. Then the pair hired several Napans displaced by the kingdom of Unta's annexation of their homeland. With Nock, Amarin, Dijek, and Nock's wife Hall, they set about knocking out the city's criminal element, led by Mock, who also happened to rule the entire island. As they succeeded, they recruited more family from the Napan refugees, including Crust, Urko, and Surly, and later non-Napans talk the Elder, Dasamulter, Tashrin, and Diker. The family's residency in the dead house rewarded them with longevity, immunity to most diseases, and other things. Unbeknown to Kelland and Dancer at the time was the fact that the Napans among them were more than simple refugees. Surly was of the royal Napan line, while Crust and Urko had been captains of the Napan fleet. They used the family, for ulterior motives, to crush the Untan hegemony. This ultimately culminated in Surly's betrayal of Kelland and Dancer. Tavor understands this, but still doesn't know why it was that Nock, Dujek, and Tashrin stayed with Surly, but the other Napans abandoned her. Nock explains that, while they were not party to Lazine's betrayal, nobody would believe they were not, and to continue to serve Lazine was complicity and damnation. Strings enters the stables and meets the other recruits of the 4th squad, introducing himself as their sergeant. He asks their names, which are Tar, Smiles, Bottle, and Korik. Strings asks who their drill sergeant was and is surprised to find out it was Brave in Tooth, whom he did not know was still alive. It was Brave in Tooth who gave names to most of the bridge burners. A handful of soldiers enter the stable led by Jessler and Stormy. The other 4 are introduced as Truth, Tavos Pond, Sands, and Pella. When Strings introduces himself, Stormy comments on how he and Jessler should have changed their names too, hinting that they know who he is. Outside the stables, Strings admits to Jessler that he is Fiddler. They walk to a nearby tavern to swap stories, each guaranteeing theirs is the best. Chapter 6. Itko, Kansas. In Itkokan, Absailor and Crocus have returned to the fishing village Absailor once called home. Her father Rellock has passed away in his sleep during the previous night, and there are signs that Hood, or one of his minions, came to collect his soul personally. As she mourns, Crocus reflects on how he has come to know her less and feels what is at her core is not fully human. He wonders if Cotillian's possession of her has put her on the path towards ascendancy, and if so, if she wants him to join her on that path. He recalls recent events where Shadowthrone sent them to an alley in the city of Ken instead of direct to the village. In the city, in order to obtain a boat from a local bookmaker, they killed 2 murderers who had been extorting him. This resulted in Crocus acquiring a new name, Cutter, for his skill with twin knives. At first he rejects his new name, but comes to accept it as he is no longer the naive cut-purse he was in Daruhistan. He decides to walk the path of ascendancy with Absailor, as Dancer had done with Kelland. The Warren of Shadow. Kalam rides through the Warren of Shadow, wondering what has happened to Quick Ben and Fiddler, as he has heard from neither of them recently, other than that Fiddler has re-enlisted. At least they are doing something. The bridge burner assassin is stuck with 1,300 children, whom he, Minala, and Apt are training as an army for Shadowthrone. They are teaching them a host of skills including stealth, tracking and laying of ambushes and traps, and it chills Kalam how zealously the children are taking to it. He reins in near an enormous stone gate swarming with shadows and is approached by Cotillion and the 2 hounds, Rude and Blind. Kalam asks Cotillion what he wishes of him. Cotillion hints that the control of Shadow is being contested and wants Kalam to find out by whom. Kalam, in the midst of a marital dispute with Minala, is eager to begin. Itko, Kansas. Cotillion and Blind arrive on the shoreline where Absailor and Cutter are living, looking for Absailor. Finding Cutter, the god asks, "Am I your patron now?" Cutter affirms and Cotillion asks if he is willing to do him a service. In exchange for his service, Cutter wants to know why Cotillion and Shadowthrone schemed to destroy Lazine and the Empire, so he can understand why they did what they did to Absailor. Cotillion answers enigmatically, only saying that games are played and what may appear as precipitous may only be a feint. Or maybe Daruhistan served their purposes better if it remained free and independent. He finishes his answer by saying there are layers to every plan, and he will not elaborate further. Cutter makes one last request, asking that he be able to summon the hound, Blind, should he need her. Cotillion agrees and leaves. When Absailor returns, she knows that Cotillion has been there. Cutter says that the 2 are to explore an island that is getting farther by the minute. Absailor responds, "Ah, of course," as the 2 push their craft into the water. The nascent. Anrak Tamlava walks along the wall that runs through the nascent, separated from his clan amass kin by the sudden appearance of the waters that now flood much of this warren. Lost in thought, he comes upon Trull Sengar chained to the wall. At first, Anrak intends to walk right past the Teast Eater, but Trull tries to make a bargain with him in exchange for his freedom. Trull promises to tell Anrak of his enemies. Anrak replies that he does not have any. Trull responds to this saying he knows Anrak has enemies because he was once among them but is no longer, and that is why he was chained to the wall. Anrak's curiosity piqued, he shatters Trull's chains and drags him by one ankle as the clan amass continues his journey along the wall. Anrak kills some giant catfish which have grown limbs and clambered onto the wall. He cooks one for Trull to eat. The two talk a while about the Teast Eater and Teast Endii before Anrak descends the side of the wall where the waters are still held back and heads towards some hills in the distance. Trull, too weak to walk, has to be carried on Anrak's back. They come to the hills, which turn out to be 7 large statues of dog-like beasts, 20 or more man-lengths high. Trull can sense nothing from them, but says he knows what they represent. It seems the inhabitants of the realm made them into their gods. Trull tells Anrak there will be a gate nearby that will allow them to leave this world. But Anrak hesitates. The clan amass says 2 of the statues are alive. Chapter 7. Raraku. Haborik. In Raraku, Haborik Ghost Hands collects flowers for Henbarati. He thinks about delusions and the whirlwind. The child now called Felisin Younger joins him, and they speak of Felisin Paran's poetry, Corbulo Dom's army, and the mages of the whirlwind. Shaak has banished Malak Rel, to the chagrin of Corbulo Dom. Haborik goes to see Leoman, and they speak of cults and faith and the mage Bidithil, who has turned his attention to Felisin Younger. Haborik thinks Bidithil ought to be killed outright, but Leoman argues with him. Haborik leaves, and Karsa Orlong tells Leoman his likely goal is to find Shaak. Haborik goes to a decrepit temple and finds Bidithil. Before entering, Lorik emerges and warns Haborik about Bidithil. The shadow mage resides within, along with the amputated body of the still-living Silgar. Haborik enters and threatens Bidithil with death if he touches Felisin Younger. Bidithil brags about the warded temple. They speak briefly about Haborik's ghost hands, and then the ex-priest leaves. Karsa Orlong. Karsa thinks of Haborik, the Tebler people, and then of Felisin, fearing that she is being used by the whirlwind goddess, and that she may be commanding slayers as Karsa himself once did as war leader. He also thinks of Leoman, who may not be sunk in Durhang fumes as he seems, but biding his time. Karsa arrives at a grove of stones and finds Felisin. Together they speak about the goddess, about statues Karsa is making there of his 2 friends Byroth Gild and Delam Thord, and then about Felisin's poetry. Haborik. Haborik has visions of Jade and Fenner. He thinks more on this strange dream, but tries to drink his tea to avoid the visions. He goes to Shaak's command tent where the mages Lorik, Bidithil, and Febril have gathered along with the renegade Fist Corbulo Dom and his mage chemist Rilo. They speak of the first hero Treach and Fenner. Then they speak of Dujek's Genabaki's campaign, and of Whiskey Jack's death. Jano's Paran's name is mentioned and Felisin freezes. Everybody continues to debate the strength of the inexperienced adjunct Tavor, and whether the noblewoman and her novice army will be a match to the whirlwind. Shaak abruptly orders everybody out except for Haborik. Alone, she cries out for her brother. Chapter 8. Aran. Adjunct Tavor Paran is standing on the marshalling grounds of Aran. The 1st Legion of the Malaz 14th Army to be arrayed is the 8th commanded by Fist Gamut. Made up of some 4,000 soldiers, it is in complete chaos and disorder. The other 2 Fists, Teen Baralta and Blistig, and the mages Nil and Nether are present too. Cuddle and Strings approach the Adjunct and Fist Gamut and ask permission to bring order to the chaotic 8th Legion. Cuddle asks the Adjunct and the Fist to remove themselves some distance away, then asks String to draw him a line. The 2 set Morinth munitions into the cobbles at the edges of the grounds, and explode them, shocking the entire legion into silence. Cuddle tells them to assemble to the line drawn by Strings and promises to throw a sharper if he is not obeyed. Slowly the entire legion takes shape, and before long, is assembled in tight, even ranks. About to dismiss Gamet's legion, the adjunct notices a small child standing where she had first stood, holding a human longbone and looking over the army. The toddler, named Grub, is collected by his adopted father Captain Kneb, who apologizes. But the damage has been done. The event has been recognized as an evil omen, one that means that a child leads the army to their death, the leg bones signifying their march under the curse of the desert sun. The army now effectively sees itself as dead due to the omen. Strings gathers a few senior sergeants and corporals around him, and relates a tale of Admiral Nock to hammer home how not to deal with a bad omen by fighting it. He tells his listeners that to overcome it one has to swallow it whole and suggests a visit to the local cemetery. The adjutant meets the fists and orders them to keep their soldiers in the barracks and ban alcohol and drugs. She also asks them to warn their soldiers that she would personally be visiting them. The fists meet in private, and Gamet tells them that if in 2 days' time, the adjunct does not deem the army worthy to march, she will make a final decision. Lastara Yil. Whilst changing her armor, Lastara Yil recalls her history and how she managed to survive on the streets of Erliton after having been cast out by her family as an unwanted child. She had then been forced to join the Temple of Rishon, where she had been trained as a shadow dancer before eventually joining the Red Blades. Her preparations are interrupted by the appearance of Cotillion, who asks her for a favor that would also benefit the Empire. Some time later, Pearl returns, and the two head out to investigate their lead. They question veterans from the 5th Squad of the 9th Company. Pearl tries to wake Stormy up. Stormy, enraged and sleepy, throws him into the air, injuring him. Lastara manages to settle matters down, and is guided to Pella outside, leaving Pearl to question Jessler and Stormy inside. She asks Pella about Felisin Piran, and he tells her that he helped her escape from Skullcup, but she is probably dead. For further details, she questions Truth, who tells her the same thing. Pella has figured out that Tavor sent Lastara and Pearl to find Felisin. Lastara asks them to keep it a secret and goes out to find that Pearl has heard almost the same account. The two then head to the impounded ship, the Salanda, where they observe the severed heads of the Teast Endii and a dead Teast Eater captain. Pearl deduces that Felisin, Heboric and Bodan had probably jumped off the ship and ended up somewhere amidst the rebellion. Pearl determines to travel that way to follow their trail. The Malaz 14th Army. Captain Kneb's 9th Company is called out to form up and muster in the parade grounds. String's idea to rob the nearby graveyard has been taken up, and human finger bones are now part of most soldiers' outfit, including Captain Kneb. Tavor recognizes the significance and asks Lieutenant Raynal, who had only just berated his troops for wearing the decorations, to procure one for himself. She suggests a uniformity to how the trinkets are worn, then orders Fist Gamet to make a standard for the army, something similar to the inspiration that the soldiers have come up with. She then receives a report that 3 ships have arrived into the harbor carrying 300 Wiccan veterans of the Crow clan. Chapter 9. Danispan. Kalam Mekar is browsing the wares of shop in a sparsely crowded marketplace in Danispan. Among the items of questionable provenance are looted tomb decorations, weapons, and various decks of dragons. The shopkeeper tells Kalam about the recent changes to the deck, including the new unaligned card known as the Master of the Deck, as well as the rise of a previously unknown house of chains belonging to the crippled god, with the throne where the king shall sit, cracked. The old man shows Kalam several knives he says are booty from the chain of dogs. One is a Wiccan Crowclan blade alloyed with Otadril, and the other is invested with elder magic and carries a stamp Kalam recognizes. He buys the knives with some of Cotillion's diamonds, and the shopkeeper notes the strange darkness inside them. Before Kalam leaves, the shopkeeper laments the loss of trade during the rebellion. He says many of the city's residents are over at the nearby Brides fortress holding the Malazan soldiers there under siege. Brides. Kalam arrives at the fortress by mid-morning, noting that the 500 or so besiegers have lost their patience and are readying an assault. Shin tells him that she has already taken care of Urias and his soldiers by poisoning the water with traub, thinking it would only incapacitate them. Kalam asks how much she used, and realizes that it is enough to lead to a horrible death for anyone who drank. Fortunately, Only 3 guards had drunk the poisoned water, and Kalam leaves Shin for a moment to kill them mercifully. Some Malazans from the fortress descend the wall with ropes, and Kalam realizes they were being watched. He notices the besieged Malazans do not look hungry or parched. They inform Kalam that they can leave any time they want via back routes, but have nowhere to go, as the entire land is out for Malazan blood. Kalam agrees to accompany the Malazans into the fortress with Shin provided their mage removes the poisoned water. The Malazans agree on condition that Kalam bring them Urais. Before he joins them, he pulls out one of the diamonds Cotillion gave him and blows on a bone whistle to summon the Aslan demon from inside it. He instructs the demon to retrieve Urais alive and join him at the rope. As Kalam starts to climb, he hears screams in the camp behind him. Soon he is past climbing the wall by the demon carrying Urais. Once inside the fortress, the Malazans eye the demon warily until Kalam tells them his real name. They introduce themselves as Sergeant Cord, Corporal Shard Bell, and Ebrin. Shard is Shin's half-brother. Kalam asks to see kindly, only to be informed that he and a lieutenant were lost when they both fell down a well and drowned. At least that is the assumption. When the bottom of the well was checked, only a fast underground river was found. The bodies must have been swept away. Cord and Kalam share a few tense words as the bridge burner advises them to leave the fortress now that the demon has killed all the besiegers below. But Cord pulls rank and Kalam agrees to follow his orders for now. Drift of Alii. A storm breaks upon Drift of Alii as Cutter and Absailor's boat nears the shore. Absailor has not spoken to him much during the trip, upset by his change in name and by his decision to serve as another of Cotillion's minions. Cutter is surprised. He thought the move would bring them closer together. The island drifts in the current, unmoored to the seabed and making landing difficult. They make for a flat shelf of rock amidst the rugged coast. Cutter jumps to shore thinking to tie up the boat, but the shelf shatters under his weight, and he is dragged under the island. Their boat overturns and is wrecked along the rocks. Before he drowns, Cutter resurfaces in a lightless pool somewhere under the island. He is too weak to climb out and is about to sink under when he is pulled to safety by an old Teist Endii named Darist. Darist says there is only one safe path to the pool, so Absailor must have drowned. The Teist Endii leads Cutter up a flight of stairs to an ancient hallway lined with pillars. They shall go no closer to the surface because the island is under attack. Cutter asks if they have come for the Throne of Shadow, drawing Darist's suspicion. The Dara quickly dissembles his true motive for being on the island, aware that the Teist Endii and the new rulers of Shadow are not allies. He says he has been sent by the scholar Barak to determine if the Teist Eater have returned to claim the throne for themselves. Darist sees through the ruse and accuses him of working for Animander Rake before continuing their journey through Drift of Alii's underground. Cutter asks again if Darist can sense Absailor, but Darist replies that he can only sense the Teist Eater. When Darist tries to convince Cutter that loss eases the pain of one's own impending demise, Cutter calls him a damn fool for surrendering to despair. The Nascent. In the Nascent, howls of rage from the spirits trapped within 2 of the statues reverberate through Onrak's bones. Trull Sengar hears nothing. They assume the spirits to be 2 of the Hounds of Shadow, as the statues do not cast shadows. Onrak finds it unfortunate that there are only 5 Hounds of Shadow left as it diminishes his chances of killing one, but Trull doubts his ability to walk away from a violent encounter with a hound. Onrak cracks one of the statues with his sword, and it explodes into a cloud of dust obscuring a dark shape within. The second statue shatters on its own. The 2 hounds attack and quickly overpower Onrak, tearing his left arm away from his body before departing together. Trull stands over a motionless Onrak and says, "Those were not the Hounds of Shadow. They were the real ones. The Hounds of Darkness," and voices concern for what they had just unleashed. As a consequence of being so badly damaged in the attack, Onrak is now shorn from the ritual of Talan. He describes to Trull what his kin would do to complete the rites deemed necessary for someone who is shorn. It would include cutting off his head and finding a suitable place for it so that he might look out upon eternity, dismembering his corpse and scattering the limbs, and returning his sword to his place of birth. But since Trull cannot do any of that, Anrak must continue on despite his present condition. Anrak laments that his existence is now meaningless. Trull assumes he himself survives only because the hounds did not notice him. They enter the rubble-littered streets of a ruined city, and reach a bridge over a river filled with silt and detritus. Amongst the flotsam they find a box of clay pots which Anrak recognizes as Morinth munitions. Nearby is an arch, the portal they have been seeking, but it is warded and seethes with scalding heat. Anrak suggests defeating the ward by shattering the pattern of its sorcery with a munition. They step back and Trull throws one of the clay spheres, resulting in a coruscating conflagration of white and gold fire. The ward is broken, but Anrak does not recognize the warren beyond. Anrak tells Trull to flee, as he can feel the brutal and alien power of the ones on the other side of the gate. He also senses outrage for the destruction of the ward. Trull crosses the bridge to hide while Anrak stays behind, expecting to be destroyed while buying his companions some time to escape. 4 tall, pale men with silver hair appear through the gate riding white horses. They wear white enamel armor and carry curved ivory scimitars. The 4 horsemen attempt to ride Anrak down, but the clan Imas has learned from his time in service to the Malazans, and stands his ground on the narrow bridge so only 2 can charge him at once. He survives both pairs of attacks, wounding one of the riders but not before the side of his face is sheared off by a blow. Now on the other side of the bridge, the 4 riders turn around to face him and identify Anrak as a servant of death, who must be annihilated. But the wounded man, Seneschal Jarud, delays further attacks saying he needs healing and Anrak is not one of the trespassers they seek. Through brief conversation, Anrak deduces that these 4 are Teist Lyasin. They ask if there are others of his kind in this realm, but Anrak brusquely refuses to answer. Jarud grows impatient and tells Anrak if he does not tell them what they wish to know they will destroy him, and they all draw swords. Before the fight begins anew, Trull appears, surrounded by 4 clan Imas, 2 of whom Anrak greets as Bonecaster Monarch Oakham and clan leader Ibergolan. Monarch says Anrak has failed the ritual and needs to be destroyed, but Anrak tells him that privilege will be contested as the Teist Lyasin view him as their prisoner. Jarud releases Anrak from their custody, saying they have no quarrel with the clan Imas. As he readies to depart, he invites Trull to join them, saying they are in need of a servant. Trull declines and suggests they alternate the role amongst themselves as he senses they could use a lesson in humility. Jarud says he will remember the slight. The Lyasin plan on departing, but Monarch says it will be difficult as the warren is a shattered fragment of Cuil de Merlin and that the Lyasins have been isolated too long and know nothing of other realms and nothing of the Ascendants and their wars. When Jarud snaps that they serve but one Ascendant, Osric, Monarch Oakham reveals that their lord is lost and unable to return to their homeland. He suggests they all work together to weave a ritual to fashion a gate, using the warrens of Telan and Lyasin as well as the blood of a Teist Eater. The Bonecaster tells the wary Trull they will not use all of it. Chapter 10. Raraku. In the stone forest near Shark's camp, Karsa Orlong is finishing up carvings of the 7 Tebler gods as well as those of his dead friends, Byroth Gild and Delim Thord. He is met by Leoman who asks about the 7 carvings and is visibly startled when Karsa tells him they are his gods. There is something he is not telling the Tebler about what he sees. Karsa cuts off this line of discussion, and Leoman informs him about the Malazan army's movements. He agrees with Corbelow Dom that the Malazan advance must be contested, but not with the pitched battles Dom favors. Instead, he has been given permission by Shaik and Mathik to venture out beyond the whirlwind with a small force to scout the Malazans, but not harass them. Karsa gets Leoman to admit that he will do whatever he desires once he is in the field. He sneers at Karsa's warning that Shaik will know he disobeyed, and begins to complain about the Chosen One's leadership and decisions. Karsa agrees, saying that she is, after all, a Malazan, and that she is chained by her memories and trapped by fear that is born out of a secret only she and Ghost Hands know. Leoman says Karsa's words whisper of defeat, which Karsa shrugs off before admitting that he once viewed the Malazans as enemies but has come to realize that they are no worse than other lowlanders. He even notes that at least the Malazans have a strong sense of justice, and that the people of 7 cities who despise them seek nothing more than to have the power the Malazans took from them, power they used to terrorize their own people. Leoman agrees and admits that that is probably why Shaik considers him to have no loyalty. He goes on to explain why he supports the army of the apocalypse. It is because he feels that the human race, with all its cruelty and brutality, should be annihilated, and the sooner we obliterate ourselves, the better the world will be. Haboric, Bidithal, Lorik, and Febril are within Shaik's tent reviewing the cards of the House of Chains that have newly appeared in the deck of dragons. They disagree on aspects of the house, namely its power, and whether it is enemy or friend. Shaik also asks to see the new unaligned card, the master of the deck, and asks Haboric what he senses from it. Haboric replies that he can sense nothing from it, and that there is no link of power between his hands and the deck. She asks him again, this time as a historian and priest, what this new unaligned card may tell him. They discuss various aspects of the details of the card and speculate on their possible significance. Haboric, being blind, asks specific questions regarding details of the card, giving Shaik and Lorik suspicions that he has knowledge he is not sharing with them. Haboric then leaves, guided by Shaik's adopted daughter, Felisin Younger. As he passes Dom's army training in the Malazan fashion, he notes how it and Tavor's army will be evenly matched. Felisin tells him he must retrace his path to the jade statue on Otadral Island that her mother has told her about. Otherwise, what haunts him will kill him. She offers to accompany him, and Haboric says he will think on it. It will be one way to deliver the girl from Bidithal and escape the battle to come. Karsa Orlong. Leoman invites Karsa to join his raiding party, but Karsa says there are no horses to match his size in this land. Leoman says there are wild horses bred by the Jag Hut and the Jag Odin to the west that would match his stature. Karsa is intrigued and agrees to get Shaik's permission to venture out to find a suitable horse. Afterwards, he will ride out to find Leoman and his warriors. But he pauses when he realizes this will leave Felisin Younger unprotected from Bidithal's depravity. He comments that he should just kill Bidithal before he leaves. But Leoman convinces him that Haboric is also making plans to depart, and will take her safely away with him. Leoman says he will see Karsa again in the morning before the Tabler leaves. After Leoman departs, the air suddenly grows cold and snakes are seen fleeing the grove. Urigal's visage awakens and the moans of 1,000 souls mixed with the snapping thunder of chain fills Karsa's mind. Urigal says the 7 have waited 3 years for the Tabler to fashion this sacred place and demands he destroy the 2 sentimental carvings of Byroth and Delam because they are offensive to him and the other gods. Karsa refuses and reminds the gods that it was his hand that freed them from their prison in the Tabler lands and brought them here. Now their first words to him are of chastisement. He warns he can shatter their carvings just as easily. The god rages, but Karsa refuses to back down. Eventually Urigal says Karsa has brought them close enough to sense the precise location they require. The Tabler tells Urigal he has plans to travel west into the Jag Odin, and they are shocked and excited that he already seems to know where they want him to go. Soon they will be free and full. The 7 gods withdraw, and Karsa knows they are not as close to freedom or as powerful as they want him to believe. He returns to the carvings of his friends, for whom this place is really sanctified, and confesses that his loyalty was misplaced. He had served glory and empty words while there was true glory before him, in the form of his loyal friends. Baratha's statue speaks. Lead us, war leader. And both of his companions agree to follow Karsa on his quest once more. Haboric. Haboric is alone in his tent meditating on death when Lorik enters. The High Mage wishes to learn more of what Haboric knows of the Master of the Deck, so he offers an exchange of knowledge that will remain between the two of them. At first Haboric says that Lorik has nothing of interest to him, but he relents when Lorik says he can tell him what he knows of the Hand of Jade. Lorik offers to brew Haboric's Henbara tea for him, and he accepts. Lorik says it is very difficult for mortals to make sense of the histories of the long-lived Teist. He warns of Teist meddling in human affairs, and is startled when Haboric remarks that it may be the other way around. They speculate on the identity of the new Master of the Deck. Lorik mentions Kim Locke, who gave the bridge burners a Tano song, which would only become sanctified if one of them returned to Riraku. Haboric and Lorik discuss the origin of the jade statues. Lorik says that they are intruders in our world from some other realm. They are all found in deposits of Otadero. Lorik suspects that their arrival was anticipated and the Otadero was prepared to trap them. Haboric disagrees, and suggests that the passage of the giants through the portal is what creates the Otadero, or maybe the Otadero was created by the accumulation of magic from a ritual involving collective sorcery, like the Telan ritual or the calling down of the crippled god. Lorik has one more piece of information to impart that will reveal much about himself. This is not shared with the reader, but we are told Haboric's world dims to insignificance as he hears it. Karsa Orlong. Karsa checks his supplies and makes ready to depart. Byroth Guild's ghostly voice begins to ruminate in his ear until Karsa tells him to be quiet. Leomen enters the glade, momentarily unsure why the Tebler has told him to stop speaking. Karsa is pleased that his friend has come to see him off. They exchange warnings and advice on how each should proceed. Karsa tells Leomen not to hide overlong in his pit and to obey the Chosen One's commands for restraint against the Malazans. He has come to respect them and fears Leoman will unwittingly awaken their full power. Leoman tells the Tebler to beware his gods and kneel before them only with clear eyes. As Karsa departs, he hears the ghostly voices of his friends say, "Lead us. Lead your dead, war leader." Corbelo Dam. Camus Relo informs Corbelo Dam of Karsa's departure, and the two continue to discuss their plans to take the Malazan Empire for themselves. Only Leoman and Haboric remain as possible threats, but Leoman leaves in a few days and Camus dismisses Haboric as a doddering fool blinded by Henborati. Their plans anticipate Fibro killing Shak, Tavor killing Fibro, and Dam and Relo destroying Tavor and the Malaz 14th Army in turn. Afterwards, they will quash the Seven Cities rebellion in the Empress' name to ensure a triumphant return to Unta, before assassinating the Empress and taking the throne. Corbelo Dam does not see how the plan can fail to work. Who can stop them? The Talon are poised to cut down the claws, Whiskey Jack and the bridge burners are dead, and Dujek is a continent away. Malik Rel is proving to be a useful ally, but Dam knows better than to trust him. Dam orders Relo to dispose of Lorik as a loose end in need of tying. As Relo leaves, Dam muses on how he would like to see all magic and gods in the world gone, so mortals could be the master of their own fate and the world would belong to people like him. Chapter 11. Arin. Gamut walks with Tavor Paran through Colton's Fall. The scene of the slaughter has become a site of pilgrimage for tribes across 7 cities, including even the enemy Semk. He informs her that although the Crow clan has joined them, the elders refuse to accept young Temel as their leader. On the march, Strings and Jessler speak of faith in commanders, and observe the fetishes hanging from the trees outside Aran. The 14th have raised the standard of a figure grasping a bone before a sandstorm. Borduk joins them, and they discuss the 3 mages of Miana's Bottle and Strings squad, Tevas Pond in Jessler's, and Balgrid in Borduk's. Strings says they could usefully work together on illusions. Lieutenant Reno passes by and asks about mages in the company on behalf of Captain Kineb. Strings answers over Jessler's objection. Gamut visits Tavor's tent where she is sealing her Otadero sword in a stone box. When its effect is shielded, a portal opens and Clawmaster Topper joins them to bring word of the losses on Genabakis. Bottle magically eavesdrops on the conversation from a distance, and thinks back to his grandmother's counseling to him to seek a deeper power. Strings and the others are found by Bottle, and Bottle shares news of Whiskey Jack's and the bridge burners' deaths. Strings leaves to grieve alone, and finds the young Wiccan leader Temel. Temel is frustrated with trying to gain control over the Wiccans. He speaks to Strings about Colton's and Diker's ends. Topper finishes his report by speaking of Jano's Paran's death, and Dujek's army. The High Fist will come to 7 cities but with a small, broken force. Topper leaves, and Gamut expresses his sorrow at the loss of Tavor's brother. She goes to find Tamber. Strings returns to camp and speaks with the older sapper Cuddle. They talk of Hood and what makes a good army. Together they agree the adjunct Tavor is made of cold iron, and they ought to find it in themselves. Part 3. Something Breathes. Chapter 12. Drift of Alii. Cutter and Darist prepare for the looming battle to defend the throne of shadow from the Teast Eater on Drift of Alii. Darist's sword is powerful, once named Vengeance, but now Grief. They then speak of grief and battle a first group of Eater. Eventually this battle ends after the arrival of Absalar with young Teast Andii. Darist had the young Andii hide, in fear of what the Eater would do to them. Darist says his brother should defend the throne himself. Cutter suspects the brother is Anomander Rake. Darist confirms this, and says that the young Andii here are Anomander Rake's various grandchildren. Both Darist and Cutter are wounded and not in fighting shape. Absalar and Cutter note that the grandchildren, protected by Darist, are not trained fighters. Cutter sees Absalar's words as hard with judgment. Absalar sends Cutter into the woods, where he finds Malazans, shipwrecked and now taking refuge in a cave. A Dalhonese man named Traveler speaks to him about the throne of shadow. A sorcerer and captain are there as well. Cutter returns and finds another Eater assault underway, this time by sorcery. Darist is wounded, the young Andii are scattered, Absalar is unconscious. Cutter calls on the Hound of Shadow, Blind, who answers, but cowers at a word from one Eater sorcerer. Cotillion arrives as well. He slaughters the Eater, then gestures so that Blind, trembling, disappears. Cutter urges Cotillion to help the Malazans, but Cotillion says they don't need help and asks Cutter to pass on the names of the sword, then vanishes. Cutter checks on Absalar, and Traveler arrives. He is the only surviving Malazan. Cutter tells Traveler the sword's names, Vengeance or Grief. Traveler takes up the sword, choosing the name Vengeance, and says he will guard the now vacant throne for a time. Absalar stirs. Cutter offers to help bury the dead, but Traveler says there is no need. Cutter lifts Absalar and goes to find a ship off the island. Bridie's Fortress. Kalam Mekker inspects the well inside the Bridie's Fortress that kindly went into. Something man-like lays chained in the water at the well's bottom, and it pulls Kalam into the underground river that feeds the well. The assassin stabs the creature, and it throws him out. Kalam then speaks with Ebron about the cult of the Nameless Ones that used to reside there. The cult chained demons to this world, and now that Kalam has exchanged with the demon will hunt him and 2 other officers once it is free. Kalam says he is going to get far away and head towards Viraku to find Adjunct to Vorparan. His journey is cut short though when an Ankaral, possessed by the demon that was in truth possessing the Tablakai that attacked him. The demon's wounds and taunts Kalam, but the assassin kills the beast and the Ankaral's soul finds peace. The wounded Kalam is then found by the high priest of Shadow Iskral Pust and the soul taken Magara. The Nascent. Within the Nascent, Anrak and Trull Sengar converse as the Tlan Amass and Teast Liason prepare. Anrak, his vow broken, sees Tlan Amass in their true withered forms. Anrak reflects on the Tlan Amass and their vow. The kin they are with, led by Monik Oakham, will dismantle him once they return to their home realm. He says the renegades he hunts have also broken their vow and now serve a new master. They speak then of the Teast Liason, and how the seneschal Jarud worships before Curald Thurlin and a power that has been usurped. The Liason god Osric has been lost. The Liason are dedicated to prove Anrak wrong, and summon the god fire. Jarud and Trull spill their blood, and this tears open a gate leading out of the Nascent. Trull and Anrak pass through, Anrak pledging to defend Trull's life. Monik pursues them in his soul-taken form as a giant ape, but vanishes in a surge of chaos. Safely out of the Nascent, Anrak says they will be pursued, and must go. The 3 other Tlan Amass, Ibragolan, Haran Epel and Ola Shane, have walked into Curald Thurlin, and Anrak says it is to kill the Liason god. Imperial Warren. Pearl and Lastara Yil traverse the ash of the Imperial Warren, squabbling and speaking of its nature. They stumble into a pit where there is a massive crucified dragon, aspect with Otadril. It is alive but enclosed, and they examine it and speak of nature's balance. They follow the tracks of other dragons who crucified the one they've seen, and reach a gate of gold fire. They travel through to a pyramid with names carved on it, then find a trail of blood leading to a decapitated Tlan Amass. Pearl picks up the head, and takes them out of the warren to a rock shelf in the sun. The Tlan Amas, Olashane, tells them that he and his kin delivered mortal wounds to a false god in the warren. To the gratitude of Ola, Pearl places the head on the ledge with a view of the basin and vista below. Pearl and Lostara continue to bicker. Chapter 13. Raraku. Shaik. Shaik commands over the forces of the whirlwind. Leoman will ride out to meet Adjunct Tavor Paran's 14th Army and assures Shaik he will not engage with the Malazans, and he departs. Afterwards Shaik, Haborik, and Corbelo Dam speak together of Leoman and the warriors they have let loose into the desert. Eventually Shaik lets Dam go to find Febril. Alone then, Felison and Haborik speak about who they can trust, Lorik, and Bidithal's warrens. They say the whirlwind is a fragment of Curel de Merlin with growing power. They both suspect Tavor's Otatral sword will negate the power of the High Mages and the whirlwind, and that the armies will have to meet on the open field. They speak more of magic, and Haborik feels that he is truly unable to leave. Felison Younger. Felison Younger is tricked by Silger into entering Bidithal's temple. Inside, the High Mage Bidithal abuses and mutilates the child. Lorik. Lorik reflects on the Tlan Amas in the past, then enters a garden to commune with Triss, the Queen of Dreams. Together they speak of Lorik disguising his nature as a Teist Lyasin, his father Osric, and the Warren Curel Thurlin. He then returns to the camp. He senses and finds Felison Younger crawling towards Karsa Orlung's grove. Felison wants to recover and wait in the grove, and Lorik knows he did nothing to stop this abuse. Haborik. Drugged with Henbara, Haborik dreams of the Jade Giants, perfect and sexless. He sees a vision of them following the crippled god into this world, as if in pursuit. He sees into the giants, and sees figures, screaming terrified mouths and beings. He finds himself within the statues, unintelligible voices and unanswerable questions. The voices speak of belief, and killing gods. Haborik wakes and found his tattoos transformed by the god Treach, and his Otatro gone, his hands slashed jade. Felison Younger. Felison Younger awakes in the grove, snakes surrounding her. She thinks on Bidithal's words, his damnation of pleasure and sensation, and of the many girls Bidithal abuses. Karsa's gods awaken and then say Felison shall have her vengeance, and she will be the knife. Chapter 14. Raraku. Wolves stalk Karsa Orlong in the mountains on the western edge of Raraku. The ghosts of Byroth Guild and Delam Thord give him unwanted advice. The wolves turn out to be the divers Rilandaras, trying to warn him of two dire travelers he will soon meet, and a threat to the world if he crosses them. Karsa ignores the warning and continues. He meets Mappo and Icarium in the ruins of a city. Mappo offers food to Karsa as Icarium sizes him up. Mappo and Karsa speak of each other's fame and powers, and Mappo mentions the many ghosts haunting Karsa and an imminent, dreadful convergence. Karsa draws his sword and Icarium strikes, breaking it, then Karsa knocks him unconscious. Karsa turns towards Mappo, who in turn knocks him out with his mace, thinking the result better than he could have hoped. Karsa awakens alone, and finds that Icarium had been digging up a 7-headed statue of a hound. Jag Odin. 6 days of travel later, Karsa finds an empty farming town. He sees agricultural life as repellent and inequitably rewarded, giving rise to control by the wealthy. He thinks it odd that the rebellion does not address this, but is only a struggle about who is in charge. He reflects on the ghosts of Byroth Guild and Delam Thord, Hood, and the chains of living and dead. Led by the ghosts from a ring of barrows, he crosses into Warrens, first Telan in the wake of a log-roast Tlan Amas army, then Amtos Felak where he finds a Jag Hut woman beneath a massive stone. The Jag Hut, Aramala, speaks of the importance of the Jag Odin, and how it has preserved so much ancient life and culture, including horses. She also tells of destroying 7 Tlan Amas scouts, leaving one who escaped to bring the army which would trap her. Saying he must answer injustice, Karsa defies High Telan flames and lifts the stone. He requests that Aramala find him a horse in repayment, and then inquires about the 7 scouts. She speaks of Jag half-bloods, and asks if he wonders about the other half. He frowns, and she says there is much she must tell him. Karsa emerges back into the Jag Odin, and finds a valley where the clan Amass made their flint weapons. In a cavern, Urigal and the other tubular gods appear and speak to Karsa about the ritual, their wills, their lives as clan Amass, and the one they now serve. Sebal says she has raised her army of the sacrifice for him to lead against the lowlanders. Karsa listens, and then crafts his own flint blade imbued with the spirits of Bairoth and Delim. Karsa says he can never be unbound, that the seven closed on him the chains that carry the souls of those he's killed. Thus he denies tubular godhood, but accepts the title of Knight of Chains, champion of the crippled god. Urigal tells Karsa that he has learned much. Karsa agrees and tells the gods that they shall witness. Chapter 15. The 14th Army's March. Vathar Hills. Strings is watching an army of 3,000 soldiers that is trailing Adjunct Tavor. He and Cuddle are surprised that they do not seem arrayed for battle. The two are suddenly surrounded by an advance party of riders, wearing crow wings. Tavor arrives, and the tribe chieftain identifies himself as Gaul, leader of the Burned Tears of the Kundral, a clan that rode under Colton. He says they wish to join Tavor's 14th Army to make amends for Colton's loss. Tavor welcomes them, and Gaul swears himself to Temel, who at a hint from Strings accepts. Gaul promises a feast. The 14th Army has gained more soldiers, but the legacy of Colton still hangs over the adjunct. Cuddle and Strings note that Temel is now on solid ground, but wonder ironically why either of them saw the advancing riders. That night there is revelry and drunkenness throughout the camp. Fist Gamut joins the adjunct and Gaul in her tent. They speak of the 14th Army's futures and the cycles of history. Gaul says his shamans predict a long but restless life for the army. Gamut is skeptical of predestination and divination, even by the deck of dragons. Leaving the tent where he feels the air is too close, Gamut meets Captain Keneb following a large cattle dog. Keneb says the dog recovered from wounds under Gessler's care, but he does not know how. They comment on Gessler and Stormy's strangely hued skin, their delivery of the Salanda, and whether they have made a pact with a god, then agree their squad should be kept in the rearguard. Gamut asks about Keneb's own past, and Keneb says he did not abandon his last soldiers, but saved his family with help from Corporal Kalam, who has been in 7 cities. Keneb thinks the dog wanders in search of Colton, and Gamut says this is surprising because Colton is unmissably present here. String sits by a long dead fire with the lapdog Roach, feeling lonely, wondering why he would want to go back to Raraku, and regretting having enlisted again. Gessler joins him, and says the only thing for a soldier to do is soldier, what he would do instead. Strings tells him to pet the dog, and walks off. He hears singing, and finds Nil and Nether in a depression near a ridge, with a bronze bowl which is attracting yellow butterflies. A presence tells Strings that Raraku awaits him, and his kin will find him there, to slay the goddess together. Nil and Nether in tears believe it was Sormo and Nath, who spoke to Strings instead of them, but Strings thinks it was something else. He wonders if Quick Ben or Kalam is waiting for him in Raraku. The singing continues to fill his head. Vathar River Crossing. Gamut reaches the crossing on the Vathar River, still blocked with bones and remnants from the day of pure blood on the chain of dogs, together with animals slaughtered by local tribes as a blessing. Keneb considers this gesture dishonorable, and decries the 7 cities' tribes' perception of the landscape as animate. Tavor calls for sappers and munitions to clear the ford of detritus and blood. Teen Baalta says the tribes will see this as an insult, and rides to have Gaul send them word to avoid misunderstanding. Keneb says Tavor may dislike this. Nil and Nether are kneeling in the river with heads bowed. To Tavor's incomprehension, Gamut pulls them out by their shirts, to their fury. Tavor sends them to Teen Baalta to help reassure the tribes, but tells Gamut to have the other Fist bring his suggestions to her in future. Strings and Cuddle blow the debris clear with crackers and cussers so the army can move forward, and send their fellow sapper maybe to check the ford for holes. Strings, however, takes no joy in clearing the way. Tavor and Gamut climb a butte north of the river, from where the city of Abarid is visible. Its harbor is crowded with ships, showing that Admiral Nock has retaken control, promising resupply. On the horizon they see the whirlwind. They discuss whether Shaik will contest their approach, battle-wearying the 14th Army but giving it experience, and revealing Tavor's tactics. Tavor speculates Shaik may feel she has already taken Tavor's measure, even though that seems impossible. They wonder if there are spies in the 14th. The sun sets, but the whirlwind holds its own fire. Chapter 16. Tezim. Kalam Mekker spends a week healing at Tezim, the temple of shadow run by Iskro Pust. He hears singing, and thinks it comes from Magara, who is in search of Pust and a Bakerel. Pust gives him some of the shadow diamonds, and offers to help him breach the whirlwind in the heart of Viraku without being detected. Out of the warren near the whirlwind wall, Kalam still hears singing. Pust does not hear it, but says that Magara cannot sing, and it is the Tano song. They approach the wall, and Pust vanishes. The Azalan demon misdirects the whirlwind, and Kalam is able to slip in unnoticed. Drift of Alii. On Drift of Alii, Cutter, carrying Absalar who is unconscious, finds Cotillion surrounded by dead Teast Eater but crouched over the body of the Witch Hall. Cotillion says he thought Surly had already killed all the Talon's command. He tells Cutter he wonders why Hall was with Traveler, and what the Talon is up to. He pulls a yellow-stained Talon from round Hall's neck and throws it into Absalar's lap, then sends Cutter to the Eater's ship, with the mission to join another of his agents to assist in dealing with someone he calls the Master of the Talon. Cotillion carries Hall's body to a glade. Shadow Throne materializes, and Cotillion tells him that Traveler is here. They speak of his stubbornness. They agree that Hall, though no longer a follower, was a friend. Shadow Throne says that whatever the Talon is up to must fail. Cotillion says he knows who their mastermind is. Cutter and Absalar are on the way there, with other agents available, and the destination is Viraku. Shadow Throne says he should tell Cotillion more of his endeavors, including about the diamonds the former gave the latter. He adds that Traveler makes him nervous, and they depart, taking Hall to their home, where they will speak at length. Cutter carries Absalar to the shore. She awakens, and tells him that she knows Traveler from Dancer's memories. He was with Dancer and Kelland from the beginning. Cutter asks if she can help him prepare an oared runner with supplies scattered on the shore, to take them to one of two badly damaged dramans anchored in the bay. He says Cotillion has another task for them. She tells him not to walk that path, but then slowly accepts the ladle of drinking water he offers. Panpotson Hills. Pearl and Lastara Yil are in the Panpotson Hills, on top of a buried city. Pearl uses the place for a ritual in which he talks to the ghost of a local earth spirit which was killed nearby. Lastara cuts him off from providing details, but he leads them southward. They find a burned trader's wagon, surrounded by tiny bones which he says are those of rats, remnants of a diver's, Grillin, who was badly hurt there. There are 5 ash heaps covering corpses. One holds a melted sigil from a Malazan mage cadre. Another corpse can still speak. Pearl learns he was an undead porter for Grillin, named Clam. They follow a trail to a further corpse, which is just a shell. Pearl says that Hood had visited in person to take the man to add to his household. Pearl identifies this body as Bodan, and the mage they found earlier as Culp. Lastara says the bodies were not present when, after following Kalam Mekker, she ambushed Shaik. She deduces that Felisin and Haborik are with the army of the Apocalypse in Viraku. She says that Shaik was indeed killed in the ambush, and they wonder who is now commanding the Apocalypse. Jag Odin. Anrak's memories have returned. Rather than the surrounding landscape with mesas, gorges and planted fields, a city on the north horizon, he sees an inland sea of the distant past, stretching between what will become the Velas Mountains and the Clatter Sea. Renigabar's trader clan is walking on the shore. Coral reefs are threatened by chill winds, perhaps from a jag hut stirring Amtos Felik. Anrak has ceded to Absintholai as bonecaster for his clan. In distrusted solitude, he fashions paintings on cave walls, herds of Ranag, then a true image of a mortal en masse, the lovely woman Kileva, thus trapping her in time. Logros and the first sword Onos Tulin are filled with wrath, though Onos shows wonder and love as well at the painting of Kileva his sister. Anrak does not know if she ever saw it. Was she angered, or did she understand his heart? In the present, Trollsingar says he shivers at Anrak's silences. Anrak tells him that the night before the ritual, near where they now stand, he was to have been banished from his tribe for his crime. But 4 Jaghut tyrants had risen. In the cavern a woman came to him in the darkness, not his wife. He does not know if it was Kileva, who in the morning was gone, defying the call of the ritual, having killed all her kin Baronos. Nor does he know what witness he heard in the passage beyond. Then he tells Troll that the trail of the renegades is fresh. Troll says the renegades have betrayed his people, and he must speak with them, then Anrak can kill them. Anrak says he is too badly damaged, but he will be satisfied with Monik Okum and Ibra Golan, who are pursuing them in hope of being led to the renegades. Troll asks if Anrak will join the renegades. He says he will only if Troll does. Anrak and Troll begin climbing into the saw-toothed hills where the clan Amas had quarried flint for weapons, which the renegades would reclaim, able to use their sorcery as they were kin to the makers, and thus severing the power of Telan from their bodies. Anrak tells Troll that he does not know why his memories have returned, and that his crime of denying the ritual to the woman, a bonecaster and soul taken, was the cause of the murders that followed. He acknowledges that he was obsessed with her. Troll says we should learn from rather than repeat our mistakes, but Anrak says he still longs for solitude from his kind and has just betrayed Monik and Ibra, the same crimes as long ago. Troll says that Anrak is sounding more and more mortal, but that he is returning home. Seneschal Jarud's Teest Layasin are camped nearby. Malakar reflects that they are battered but at least alive. They are bitten by vicious flies, leaving something squirming beneath the skin. Jarud is anguished, and Aeneas watches over him. Orenas guards the horses. Malakar foresees an accounting with the clan Amas. The Teest Layasin had undertaken the ritual in good faith. Jarud announces that the guardian is dead, but their brothers and sisters will hold until Osric's return. Meanwhile the 4 of them have another task: find the trespassers who stole the fire, and are in this world close. Jarud has sensed an old friend not far away, whom they will seek out. I carry him. Chapter 17. Jag Odin. Karsa. Karsa Orlong shapes the blade of his flint sword in the heated clan Amas cavern. The irony of Bairoth Guild and the loyalty of Delim Thord infuse the weapon. The 7 gods are present in full, carrying their own weapons, and now free from the ritual that had bound them. They tell Karsa the Warren of Telan has found his sword, and it will never shatter. Urigal says they have fought wars beyond counting, and Karsa, addressing them as Clan Amas, agrees. Sibal says that being resists unbeing, and that order wars with disorder. The broken-necked clan Amas describes a lame Ranag falling inevitably to a pack of eye. Karsa says their new master would offer the Ranag a haven. Sibal says the master seeks a new paradigm, a third force between order and dissolution. Karsa tells them that this master demands the worship of imperfection, and that they are not gods, protecting and comforting, but slave masters, the Tebler's unseen chains. He says that Sibal was the taker of children, and the 7 gave their own burdens to the Tebler. Urigal replies that this is because the Tebler failed. Sibal says the answer the crippled god shows is to celebrate failure. Karsa says he now gives his own answer, and wielding his sword cuts her in half. He tells the other 6 that her army of foundlings will follow him, and that he freed the 7. If they appear again, he will destroy them, because they used him, then offered him a new set of chains. He tells them to get out, and they exit the cave. Sibal says his attack was unexpected, and he says she is hard to kill. She tells him a sea like one long ago around the hills could give her oblivion, and the crippled god has abandoned her. Karsa intends to search for a jag horse. He puts Sibal's head and right arm in his pack. At the cave entrance, he knocks aside 2 intruders with the flat of his sword. Troll Singer and Anrak, who had been swept aside by Karsa, enter the cave. Holding Clan Amas remains, Anrak steps into the fire that Karsa had left burning. When it goes out, Troll realizes that Anrak has 2 hands again. They emerge from the cave in pursuit of the renegades. Karsa looks out over the wild rolling Jag Odin prairie land, and it captures his heart. He knows Tablakai Thelamen have walked it before. He gives the name, Bairoth Delim, to his sword, the wind, the land, or all three. The sword's first kill is a small deer for his dinner, and he wonders if the ghosts, now silent in the flint, disapprove. At sunset he meets a jag hut Sinajig, who has a brazier where they cook the Eris deer, and a massive iron-bound chest apparently used for travel, as a hiding place, and to store a never-emptying crystal carafe of chilled red wine. Sinajig says Aramala contacted him, and undertakes to introduce him to Furlis, who can summon jag horses. Sinajig says he once aspired to infamy, which Karsa is destined to achieve. Karsa says he used to care for fame but changed his mind. Sinajig explains the chest does not use Amtos Felik, and there is no cosmic law against Jag Hut using other sorcery, so that finding a Forkrola sale to provide bloody adjudication of the issue is fortunately not required. Karsa is quite restrained at Sinajig's talkativeness. Sinajig and Karsa travel together to a vast elder tree of great antiquity, alone on a hill and wrapped in thick but translucent spiders' webs, within which is Furlis, a Jag Hut impaled there by Tlanamas as a child, on a spear from which the tree grew. Speaking in Karsa's mind, she says her blood gave the Jag horses their longevity. Trell like Mapo Runt are hunting the horses to extinction, and Icarium frequently visits wanting heartwood for a mechanism to measure time, but she only gives him branches to make a bow or arrows. Karsa mentions his unresolved argument with Icarium, and Furlis and Sinajig commune silently in alarm. She calls the horses, expecting at most a dozen, but thousands arrive, answering instead the call of the blood oil coursing in Karsa's veins. From them he chooses a young stallion with white mane and tail, and names him Havoc. Karsa calms Havoc easily, and the other horses wheel away. Sinajig asks why the Tubler have not conquered Genabakis, and Karsa says they will, led by him. Sinajig says they have witnessed the birth of infamy, and Karsa thinks to himself that they do witness but cannot imagine what he will shape. Sinajig. After Karsa has vaulted onto Havoc's back and ridden away, Sinajig feeds Furlis Eris deer meat. He says she has disguised the remains of the Azath house underneath them well, and it was foolish of the Tlanamas to drive a spear here. They discuss how the house had already been dying, fatally wounded by Icarium, who would have freed his father if not struck unconscious by his Tablakai companion, ironically, as the father did not wish to be saved. The death of the house weakened the fabric enough to tear the warren apart. They admit that Karsa surprised them. They had sensed the 6 Tlanamas spirits who had hovered nearby wanting to guide Karsa with their knowledge, but who were afraid, not of the house of which only life spirit remains in the spear, but of Karsa himself. Sinajig says the 6 are not as foolish as they seem. Part 4 House of Chains. Chapter 18 Raraku. In the army of the Apocalypse's camp in Raraku, Felisin Paran recalls her youth, with Tavor using toy soldiers to recreate a famous battle of Knussen Devor. Now as Shaik, she looks out on the desert in front of her where Corbulo Dam wants to engage the Malaz 14th Army. Mathik is nearby with bodyguards. She does not know why he fears assassins, as she feels protected by the growing power of the whirlwind, which will soon demand a place in the deck of dragons. She thinks on how to deal with Tavor after victory. Lorik, arriving at her summons, says he has been unwell. They talk of Haborik, who has barred himself in his tent for weeks, according to Lorik in distress at Shaik's sacrifice. They speak of the coming battle and Corbulo Dam's certainty, which Lorik distrusts. Lorik says that veterans speak of cold iron and hot iron, and calls Mathik to explain. Rather than a definition, Mathik gives examples, including Colton, Dijek One Arm, Admiral Nak and Kaz Devor as cold iron, whereas the army of the Apocalypse is hot iron. Shaik staggers when he says they must pray Tavor too as hot iron, because cold defeats hot 3 or 4 times to 1. Lorik realizes that Shaik knows Tavor and understands she is cold iron. Questioned by Lorik, Mathik says that Leoman wields the will of cold iron, and Tablakai is capable of both. Southwest of Viraku. With Leoman's riders, we are introduced to Korub by Lenthenulas. Korub had been rescued from torture by Leoman, and would give his life for him. Hidden in sand on a crest, he and Leoman observe scouts riding not far in front of the main 14th Army. Leoman says they will attack tonight, despite Shaik's orders. Raraku. Lorik. Lorik, using sorcery to elude the probes of the whirlwind goddess, visits Karsa's grove, which may be sanctified and shielded from the goddess's view. He wonders why Shaik has not asked about Felisin younger. Does she already know what Bidithil did, and not care? He thinks instead she is obsessed with Tavor. He speaks with Felisin, who says that Shaik does know, but needs Bidithil to expose the plotters. She believes that Shaik Elder had been uncaring, a tool of the whirlwind goddess, but that Shaik Reborn was different, until the goddess became too strong. Felisin Younger says all are orphans, Bidithil from his temple, Haboric, Corbalodam from great soldiers, Febril who murdered his parents, Lorik himself, who thinks of Osric, leaving only Leoman, whom she calls our flawed diamond, and Unchained. Both feel that Tablakai's statues of his gods in the grove around them are haunting. Felisin Younger says Lorik must act soon, and they have more to discuss this night. Felisin Paran. Shaik approaches Haboric's tent, which is surrounded by powerful wards. He permits her to enter, but as she does so, she is freed from the whirlwind goddess's influence. Feeling bereft, she remembers Beneth and his twisted world. She notices that Haboric has hands and his tattoos have transformed. He is building a temple to Treach, he says, addressing her as Shaik, but she replies that for a moment she is Felisin Paran. Suddenly she remembers Felisin Younger, and sees knowledge in Haboric's eyes, but he pushes her out of the tent saying she must attend to Tavor and Febril, and rely on Bidithil. When she is beyond the wards again, the goddess returns to her. The stars shimmer above with the goddess's presence. Unperceived, a barbed shape slips out of the tent towards a distant glade. Bidithil. Bidithil rests in shadows, thinking that Febril seeks the warren for himself, and wonders why. He reflects that even betrayers can be betrayed. Bidithil does not intend to fail Shaik, but has goals of his own, vengeance against pretenders to the throne of Shadow. He begins the closing chant to shadows in his temple, calling them his children, asking if they remember the dark. He hears the soft call of the pretenders, who are coming closer. Corbalodam. In his tent, Corbalodam, ignoring the drugged woman who had amused him earlier, sits with his team of 11 assassins, drawn from the dog's lairs. Some of them had worked with the holy Faladan. Others are Malazans he had selected long ago, and the remainder are from local 7 cities' tribes, including one who had slain Sormo and Nath. He tells them that Camus Relo has chosen some of them for a singular task, but that all are essential, and 2 of them will guard Corbalo himself. Then he dismisses them. Camus is waiting in a side chamber. Corbalo asks him what he fears now. Camus accuses him of foolish complacency. Corbalo counts off those who need not be feared: Shaik, Lorik, Haboric, and Leoman and Tablakai, both far away. Of Bidithil he says that Febril just has to offer the vice he desires. But Camus first offends, then alarms Corbalo by suggesting the whirlwind goddess may suspect them. Corbalo admits she might allow a claw to infiltrate the camp to strike at himself, Camus and Febril, but thinks she is not insidious enough. Camus says she would only have to acquiesce in a scheme by Topper, but Corbalo concludes that they are well protected and need not fret. Camus says he will proceed on his own terms, then at Corbalo's order departs. Corbalo finishes his wine and takes to his sleeping bed. Solara. Solara, the woman who had been with Corbalo and has added sleeping drops to his wine, leaves the tent and staggers through the camp, less affected by Durhang than she appears. She thinks of the reward of death that, in her master's words, under balance she will both offer to others and take for herself. She recalls her childhood when her now dead mother was a camp follower of the Ashok regiment. At the latrines she calls, "I remember the dark," and is answered by a small girl to whom she gives coins for food, and a message for their master of what she has heard this night. Haboric. Haboric, moving with a gait which has become almost ape-like, approaches Tablakai's glade, where he sees 2 figures. He realizes that he has ceased to be mindful, permitting a terrible crime. Noting that the 2 have not exposed Bidithil, he withdraws. He acknowledges that if, as Treach's new destriant, he attacked Bidithil, the clash might be uncontrollable. Bidithil's temple is sanctified, even if no longer to shadow. With rage he thinks he can do nothing. Heading for his tent he sneaks behind a small girl who is catching raisin, but after he passes she asks herself if the funny man remembers the dark. Southwest of Viraku. Korab, amongst Liaman's warriors who attack the Malazans with fire bolas for the supply wagons, loses his axe-like weapon stuck in an enemy helmet, and miraculously recovers when his horse rolls. On the Malazan side, Lutz, Borduk, Maybe and Hub watch as Korab rides off. Leoman, waiting for Korab to catch up, tells his riders that Seti, Wiccans and Kundra will pursue them. They will lead the Seti to their death. Raraku. The mage Febrile sits to watch the sunrise, with the city awakening at his back. Slowly, he is aware, because the whirlwind goddess is consuming life's forces. He thinks on Sha'ik, who can speak alarmingly in his mind, though lately she does so less frequently. Does she know his plans? He understands they all hide themselves, from allies as much as enemies, but he has faith in chemistry low. Febrile maintains his own deadly nuances, but trusts in simplicity not complication. Suddenly Sha'ik speaks almost at his side, making his heart hammer. She tells him he is misled by the opacity of the whirlwind wall, and is facing not east but northeast. Further she says that the goddess does not feed on her followers' energy as he thinks, but instead provides them with focus, like the wall, which though seeming diffuse actually traps sunlight, gathering heat which would burn him to the bone. He considers belatedly that living simply is laudable, but seeing simply is a deadly flaw. It is too late to change his plans. Chapter 19. Southwest of Viraku. Fist Gamut and Adjunct Tavor Paran look over those killed last night in Liaman's ambush. They discuss commanders including Dasamulter, then Gamut says he will command his soldiers himself. Strings has arranged a scorpion competition, where soldiers will bet on the creatures fighting. Fiddler and Cuddle are spoken to by Gamut and Kaneb about them being needed for the impending battle that night. The scorpion battle takes place, and Fiddler and Bottle's joyful union wins, by a maneuver living up to its name. Gamut speaks with Tavor about the incoming battle. Nil and Nether tell them that the spirits of the land are agitated because something additional is happening. As they are about to explain, Gamut rides on, feeling dull and weak. Korab Bilanthenulas prepares for battle, thinking on the Malazan Empire. He sees a squad working on a nearby hill, and Leoman LEDs the rebel forces there. Inside the camp Gamut worries. The rebels attack, but the helmets are a decoy and Marines fire away and detonate munitions on the hilltop. Korab escapes, barely getting away from a deadly piece of clay munition by slamming a discarded helmet over it and launching himself off the ground. Both Fiddler and Cuddle are surprised at Korab's surviving. Gamut rides back towards the Malazans. He hears screaming and is wounded by an explosion which kills his horse. Jessler and Pella rush to his side. Cuddle reunites with Fiddler and the sappers discuss the battle, the Malazans, and who survived. Tavor finds the recovering Gamut, who is being treated by healers. Gamut thinks he is no longer a soldier and should not be Fist. He suggests Captain Kaneb be promoted as temporary replacement. Korab reunites with Leoman and they discuss the battle, admitting they had underestimated Tavor. Leoman tells Korab to send a messenger to Sha'ik saying that their raids will continue until they rejoin her 3 days before the 14th Army arrives, and that he has no faith in Korbalodam's strategy. Chapter 20. Drift of Alii. On the Draman just off Drift of Alii, Cutter surveys the carnage Cotillion has wrought among the Teast Eater. Deciding he needs a variety of weapons, he takes a bow, arrows and spare strings from a dead archer, and with difficulty restrings the bow. Absalar arrives, covered in someone's dried blood. She says that the sorcery on the ship seems tainted. Cutter wonders if all Warren's humans can access our denegrations of Elder Warrens. As they climb down into the runner, he sights Traveler, Malazan soldiers and Teast Ndii on the shore. Absalar says that the group intends to take the Draman now that the Throne of Shadow is protected by demons Cotillion has sent. She explains that Cotillion cannot move the throne because Animander Rake wrought sorcery around it. Cutter suggests that Shadow Throne could come here to claim the throne. Absalar replies that as Kelland he had done just that with the first throne of the Clan Amass, but then had not taken advantage of his control over them. Cutter says that Shadow Throne could likewise take the throne of Shadow and not use it, thus denying it to others while not attracting unwanted attention. They wonder if Shadow Throne's scheme is to take every throne then do nothing with their power, so as to curtail all the gods' games. As the runner moves forward, towing the Draman, Absailor says that for 2 years Kelland and Dancer vanished from this realm, following a trail through all the warrens, connected with the Azath houses. Cutter surmises that Kelland and Dancer could not risk controlling both the Malazan Empire and the Shadow Warren, because ascendants would have pounded them. Instead they orchestrated their own deaths, keeping their rule of Shadow secret. Absailor points out that the outcome on Drift of Alii has been advantageous for Cotillion, with Darist and the Eater dead and the sword Vengeance in Traveler's hands. Cutter notes that Cotillion had to intervene because the hound blind balked at a word from an Eater mage. The hounds remember who were their masters. Suddenly the skies darken and with a crash Cutter and Absailor are swallowed in shadow. Jag Odin. Onrak and Troll Sengar are walking through the Jag Odin, for a time alongside a giant tortoise. They speak of mating, for tortoises then for their own kinds. Troll admits he is very young. Onrak notices the tracks of the 6 renegades, and suspects that one is a bonecaster. He thinks of bonecasters among the Logros clan en masse. Of these, Ola Ethel, Kileva Onas, Monik Okum, Hentos Ilem, Tembanasto, and Open Nodast are accounted for. Assuming that the 6 are of the Logros clan, Absindolai, Tenig Ilbe, and Iestos remain as possibilities. Onrak tells Troll that Logros had removed the first throne from this land because the Nameless Ones were close to finding it, realizing that a mortal seated in it could command the clan en masse. He says that the Nameless Ones serve the Azath houses, and the command would have been that the Amass accept eternal imprisonment. Then, on a continent south of 7 cities, a mortal did find the throne, Kelland. But his exploitation was constrained, he was assassinated, and Empress Lazine does not command the Amass. Onrak does not know how Kelland found the throne, nor why though associated with the Nameless Ones he did not order imprisonment. But Onrak suspects the renegades are heading towards the throne. He decides to wait for Monik and Ibra Golan to inform them of this. Troll warns him that Monik will be angered by the way Onrak regained an arm, and reminding Onrak of his vow to serve Troll asks him not to put himself at risk. But Onrak says the renegades serve the same master as Troll's kin, and Troll acquiesces. Onrak mentions that only a mortal can take the first throne, and that a new bonecaster in a distant land will be asked to free the Amass from existence. Monik and Ibra arrive in columns of dust. They are furious. Troll tells them Onrak has information. Onrak says that the renegades, traveling through chaos, are leading their new master to the first throne, in order to place on it a mortal Teast Eater, who would command the new bonecaster. Onrak offers to work with Monik and Ibra. Monik immediately replies that Logros hears and accepts. They talk of how the throne has no guardians. Logros's army remains on 7 cities, having only sent representatives in answer to the new bonecaster's summons, and how few they are to confront the renegades. Troll desires his weapon of choice, a spear. Monik says the renegade bonecaster is Tenig Ilbe under a new name. He had been a loyal bonecaster, at one time called Haranala, until he failed against the Forkola Sale in the Lateran Wars. Onrak says choosing to see such failure as disloyalty has been a mistake. The renegades are of the clan en masse own making. As they prepared to follow the renegades using the Warren of Telan, Monik asks Onrak what became of the rest of the body with which he repaired himself. Onrak says it had been taken away and he does not know who had destroyed it, but it was done with a single blow. North of Viraku, Lastara Yil and Pro visit the site where Lastara assassinated Shaik Elder. The skeleton is unburied. Lastara reflects that if the Tablakai bodyguard together with Leoman had not prevented her taking the head as a display trophy, the rebellion would not have happened. Pearl deduces and Lastara eventually accepts that it is Felisin Paran who has become Shaik reborn. In order to bring this news to Tavor in time, they will have to pass surreptitiously southwards through the whirlwind. Because Lastara is Pardu, the goddess will not notice her. Pearl says it will be more difficult for him, as he is a quarter Teast Ndi. His mother was from Drift of Alii. He is still confident of finding the Talon leader. In poor shape after the Thurlin warren, they bicker and flirt as they draw near. Pearl's plan is to follow in Lastara's shadow. 6 steps without resistance, and they are through the whirlwind, into Raraku. They grab onto each other and begin to kiss. Raraku. At nightfall not far southwest, Kalam Mekar wakes from dreams of the song he has been hearing. By traveling at night, he hopes to reach Shark's camp unseen. He jogs across a former seabed, then sees ghost soldiers on a causeway. Ascending, he is surrounded by water with sinking ships. 2 of the soldiers, Coulson and Erethel, speak of their battles against Disimbalakis the first emperor, their defeat of 5 of the 7 protectors, and how the nameless ones say the black beast has been driven from the realm. The soldiers begin singing a song like one Kalam has heard before. Kalam now speaks with the gaunt ghost he calls Tano Spiritwalker, who says he was the last seneschal of Iragatan, banished by the first emperor for alliance with the nameless ones. It was he who had given the song. The ghostly figures and sea depart. Beyond the causeway is a ruined city. Walking through it, Kalam hears horses and hides. 5 Parda riders and their shaman dismount. Kalam decides they are too furtive to belong to Shak's army. The shaman begins a ritual. Its unintended conclusion is the arrival of 2 massive hounds, who kill and feed on the Parda. Kalam sees that these are not hounds of shadow. Suddenly one of them stares at his hiding place, then attacks. He throws the last of his own shadow diamonds into its path, then blows his bone whistle as loudly as he can. 5 Azalin demons rise from the ground and confront the hounds. Kalam escapes from the ensuing battle, hoping at least one demon will survive to inform Shadow Throne of the hounds. Meanwhile in Danisban, Erlatin near Keeper's Tower, further Azalin arise from diamonds disseminated from those Kalam had used to pay for his knives. They have tasks requiring the silencing of witnesses. The 5 in Raraku, however, have a fierce and unsatisfactory fight with the hounds, eventually retreating to lick their wounds. In his realm, Shadow Throne at first is shocked, then his mind races. Tesm. Cutter and Absailor's runner splinters as it lands on a stone floor in a dark and dusty chamber. Cutter lights a lantern from his pack. There is a doorway surrounded by Bakarala. They are back in 7 cities. Making their way upwards, they reach a circular room where Iskril Pust is waiting to welcome them. He directs them towards stairs to find his wife, and vanishes. Chapter 21. Raraku. Febril. Walking out of the Raraku encampment, Febril envisages the world as plunging into chaos, but dreams of a rebirth. He recalls how the holy Follett and Cura had ordered him, then High Majiltara, to destroy the ancient holy texts of the city of Yugarat and crucify its savants, so as to keep them from the advance of Dasa Multer, who would take Ankura's life as punishment. Febril himself had temporarily lost his mind, murdering his parents who had disowned him over the outrage. The sorcery he had unleashed on them and their household had left him prematurely aged, enabling him to escape the city unrecognized. He wonders if his betrayal by destroying so much knowledge was more unforgivable than the clan and mass slaughter of the inhabitants of Aran. What he finds most unforgivable is that Shak knows all this, having plundered his secrets. So she must be removed. He understands that Corbelow Dam has imperial ambitions and that Malik Rel is heading to Aran to surrender himself, and announce that Corbelow has been working in Empress Lazine's interests all along. Febril believes Corbelow has agents in the palace at Unta. Despite his temporary accommodation with Corbelow, Febril intends to defeat him in the end. Arriving at a clearing ringed by low stones, Febril meets Chemist Relo and 4 of Corbelow's assassins. He warns that the path they wish to follow is long and treacherous. He says the stones around them are the tops of menhirs, and reveals that the whirlwind goddess, though no longer bound by the vow of the ritual of Telan, originated as a spirit of the clan Amas, whose reign came before the first empire of Disimbalakis. When humans rebelled against the Amas, they buried the few they destroyed in sacred sites like the one in which Febril and Camus stand. Febril says the goddess's rage may come from memory of a betrayal, and that Raraku itself holds power-filled memories of the sea. Camus asks Febril to open the path, and thinking that his civilization will flower again, Fibro raises his hands. Lorik. Lorik feels bestial powers approaching, and hears whispers of a song. He knows he should leave, taking Felisin younger with him, but his curiosity holds him. Unable to enter Curald Thurland to seek answers, he will try for Telan. Despite his contempt of fighting, he dons Teast Lyasin armor. At the glade, Felisin younger sleeps. Facing the statues of Tablakai's gods, where he hopes a remnant of Telan remains, Lorik unveils power. The memory of Raraku. Lorik journeys to a beach on a huge lake. He encounters a hyena, which flees, then finds the body of an ape-like creature. He realizes he is not in the warren of Telan, but in Raraku's most ancient memory, which underlay Tablakai's glade. He sees a herd of cattle running in panic. They are chased by 7 gigantic black hounds, flanked by a score of half-human creatures like the one whose body he had found. Then he notices 3 Kane Che Mal Kel hunters tracking the hounds. From studies by his father in Moon's Spawn, he understands that both hounds and hunters are intruders in this realm. The hounds disappear into a basin, then ambush the hunters, rapidly destroying 2. As he warily retreats towards the lake, the hounds turn to follow him. He is rescued by a gold and white dragon which closes him in its claws and flies him over a sea to a tower on an island. Calling the dragon father, Lorik says he had been looking for him. He tells Osric, who is now in Lyasin form, that the Queen of Dreams thinks he is lost. Osric replies that this is what he wishes. He says he uses the Jag Hut Tower to observe Kane Che Mal skykeeps, like Moon's Spawn, as they approach over water from the north. Moon's Spawn itself had been damaged, but reached a glacier north of the Labyrinth Plateau which hid it until Osric and Animander Rake had found it. Osric has seen 3 skykeeps arrive here, only to be destroyed by the Daragoth, his name for the Hounds of Darkness Lorik had seen. To the dismay of the Nameless Ones, Dissimbalakis had made a pact with these 7 hounds, which gave the name to the original 7 cities. Osric confirms that they are not in a warren but in Raraku's memory, which is shrinking and surrounded by a wall of oblivion, then challenges Lorik over his own knowledge of Raraku. Feeling frustrated with his father, Lorik asks about the half-humans. Osric says that ironically they may have been domesticated by the Daragoth. In turn, Lorik annoys his father by muttering that in the Teast Andii tongue, Daragoth would actually be Daratinjaragoth. Osric says he is just like his mother. Lorik says Osric's people pray for his return, and that his familiar has been slain. Osric suggests finding another. He veers into dragon form, and despite Lorik's protest again takes him in his claw. They fly west then north to snowy mountains near a vast white emptiness, the edge of the memory. Landing in the snow, Osric sembles into Lyasin form. There are creatures near the edge, mostly demons. They approach one, reptilian and about the size of a dog, with 4 hands and 4 eyes. Osric says it may suit Curald Thurlan. Lorik speaks in the mind of the demon, offering an alternative to death in the snow. Seeking warmth, it agrees to consider a partnership if Lorik saves it. Lorik says he will take the risk. When Osric veers again, the demon is excited to see the dragon, and gives its name as Grey Frog. Raraku. Lorik. Abruptly back in Raraku, Lorik wishes he had asked his father more questions. Grey Frog says it is hungry, and will discuss the partnership after it has eaten. Shaik and Bidithil. In her tent, Shaik counts her advantages against Adjunct Tavor and the 14th Army, experienced troops, potential resistance of the Whirlwind Goddess to Otadral, her mages. But she is terrified. She is aware that she has given her freedom to the goddess in return for vengeance, and that the goddess does not wish her to think. She receives a visit from Bidithil, and asks why he sends shadows to spy on her. He says he wishes to protect her from a threat he will soon precisely know. He tells her that now Funir is gone, Heboric has been chosen by Treach as Destriant, and is no longer broken. Shaik commands Bidithil to call off his spies on Lorik, and warning him to be careful dismisses him. Outside, Bidithil thinks that he will not call off his shadows, and that after the Malazan Empire is dealt with, the goddess will need not Shaik but himself. Meanwhile he must help Shaik against the conspirators. Suddenly Feeble is present, telling Bidithel he must either join the conspiracy or stay neutral, and offering the role of High Priest of the Whirlwind Warren as reward. Bidithel says he accepts, provided he has a free hand. Feeble leaves, and Bidithel realizes that had he not agreed he would already be dead, as Feeble shows no fear of shadow spirits. He must learn why before determining his next move. The offer is tempting, but Bidithel feels vulnerable. Solara. In Corbeau Dom's tent, Solara has continued to spy on a meeting with Feeble, though she is drugged and her mind is unclear. As she leaves the tent, a guard tells her that Feeble has ordered her death. He begins to rape her, and she kills him with his own knife. A second guard hits and drags her, but is in turn lethally hit by a taloned hand glowing emerald. Her rescuer is tattooed to resemble a tiger. Touching her, he force heals her of the damage Bidithel had done. He introduces himself as Haboric, Destrian to Treach, and takes her to his temple to recover, saying he will need her help if she chooses to give it. Lorik. Lorik brings a freshly killed lamb for Grey Frog. Felison Younger awakens and he introduces Grey Frog as his new familiar, or ally. He tells Felison that she must leave with Grey Frog and another as soon as possible, and that he will follow when he can. She says she is ready, no longer seeking vengeance against Bidithel. Haboric says there will be a convergence with unexpected guests, and Bidithel will be dealt with. He is staying to witness and obtain answers. For now he will leave her with Grey Frog, which says it will protect her provided Haboric is not gone long. Haboric. Haboric receives a visit from Lorik, who as he anticipates immediately notices the change in him, asking what Treach's interest is. Haboric points out there will be a battle. Lorik hopes Haboric will take Felison Younger away. Haboric tells him to move her camp further out and prepare 3 saddled horses plus supplies to take us to Danisban after a few more days. They mention the convergence. Haboric says there is something of an alliance between them, and rather than seeking vengeance, they should leave Bidithel to his fate. Korab. Back close to the Whirlwind Wall, Korab Bylin Thenulas rides with Liamon's forces, observing Tavor's distant army behind them. They have made nightly raids and lost half their numbers, but have gained time and knowledge. Leoman thinks Otadro will penetrate the wall, and there will be a battle on Corbeau Dom's chosen ground, which he, Korab and probably Mathic will merely watch. If Corbeau needs them, the war is lost. They ride forward through the wall. Between Yugarat and Raraku, Karsa Orlong rides his new horse Havoc, which is capable of both stamina and speed, outdistancing mounted warriors guarding the bridge at the city of Yugarat. He traverses the hills of the Yugarat Odin and skirts Lato Rivi. He is keen to protect Leoman and deliver death, not to Malazans but to those in Shark's camp against whom he has made judgments as a Tebler. Only days from Raraku, he sees the Whirlwind Wall to the northeast. At camp he pulls the remnants of Sabal from his pack for the first time. She tells him that he is the mortal sword, the Knight of Chains in the house of the crippled god, who is master of both of them. Karsa refuses the role, and the crippled god. She says the gods chained him in pain, and Karsa says he will break the chains then kill him. Chapter 22. Fiddler speaks with fellow Marines and the 9th Squad. He banters with Bomb, Dead Smell, and Throat Slitter. The Marines speak about the commanders of the 14th Army, and then Bottle comes with a small doll. Bottle uses the doll to try and divine the forces at place, first thinking Hood, then it indicates perhaps the rope is here. But Fiddler thinks he knows what assassin it is truly. Gamut hears the screaming of spirits. He thinks on Captain Kaneb and Adjunct Tavor Piran. He goes to the wall of the whirlwind where he finds Grub and speaks to the boy about shiny things and thinking too much. Kaneb and Temo find Gamut, then together they ride to find Tavor. The adjunct will use her Otadro sword to break the whirlwind. Despite not knowing what is on the other side, they will break the wall. However, before she fully unveils her sword, the wall withdraws and they can enter Raraku. The commanders together are nervous to ride further in, and Gamut claims back his title of Fist. Fiddler and Marines watch the whirlwind withdrawing and wonder what it means, together speaking about the 14th Army's commanders. Kaneb and Gamut ride together then, speaking of formations briefly, and ride into Raraku in dusty silence. Chapter 23. Tezim. Magara cooks for both Absalar and Cutter within the Temple of Shadow at Tezim. Together the pair speak about Kalam Mekar and Cotillion. Absalar thinks Cotillion wants to use all three of them, but is hesitant about Absalar since she has many of his memories and knows the mortal man dancer. Cutter asks where they will go, and he has a feeling Absalar knows. Warren of Telan. Trull, Sengar and Amrak travel with the other clan amassed through the Telan Warren. Through tundra and jungle, they will journey all the way to the first throne to defend it from Teast Eater and renegade clan amass. They journey into the Warren together and speak about their mission, and Trull struggles to make the same journey the clan amass does. Trull also alludes to his past, and the story of his shorning. He doubts if there is anything to be learned from it, and says he will tell them about it when they are waiting at the first throne. Raraku. Pearl and Lastara are within Raraku. The whirlwind goddess has withdrawn her power, and they can see the toll she has taken on the land. They speak more than about the Talon, the rebellion and their attraction to each other. Lastara then knocks Pearl out with a distraction. She briefly spots the Ashok regiment, and then speaks with Cotillion. They speak more about other tasks, and Cotillion lets her keep an object. Tezim. Absalar faces the desert, and meets with Cotillion. Together they speak of Cutter, and his love for Absalar. Cotillion wants to use the boy in a way. They speak about Absalar's power, and her restraint. Cotillion speaks to her of an all-encompassing love, a love of multitudes. Absalar decides to help Cotillion in Cutter's place. Cotillion leaves, and soon after so does Absalar. Panarak Oasis. Kalam is hidden amongst petrified trees near Shag's camp. He reflects on his otadral knife and senses some foreign power in the forest. Kalam has an acorn. The first throne. Trull and Anrak travel together into a warm jungle. They speak about the Amass past and where they lived. The Amass people's ancestors were the Eries. The Eries were a more primitive people, but amongst the first to be aware. They had holy sites that burned through the Warren of Telan. They use this gate, and in it, an Eries woman takes Trull's seed, leaving him with cuts on his stomach and blood on his lap. Once through the gateway, though, they are greeted by Apt and the boy Panic. Panic is defending the first throne, and says he will lead them to the others. Chapter 24. Panarak Oasis. Gamut looks over the camp, thinking on strategy for the impending battle. He meets with Adjunct Tavor Paran and discusses this, the 14th Army now in sight of Corbelow Dom's Army of the Whirlwind. Nil and Nether speak to them about the earth and spirits. They start to hear distant music and a song of voices. Gamut returns to his legion and tells them that unidentifiable soldiers may join them, and they are to give them commands. However, the song is hurting Gamut, and he wants to be left alone. Fiddler struggles to hear over the song. Bottle helps him, and the two speak together. Speak of the song, the bridge burners, and of the Eries Owl. Bottle says his grandmother would speak to him of the Eries Owl. Fiddler thinks more on returning to Raraku and wonders if this will be his last battle. In Leoman's camp, they can spot the Wiccans approaching. Korab Bylan Thenulas rides to alert Mathik and the rebel army, and sees that other messengers had been slain. However, he luckily makes it through. Sha'ak looks out on Tavor's and Corbelow Dom's armies. She thinks on the futility of this conflict. She thinks more on the desert and Empress Lazine. She speaks to Camus Rilo about the opposing mages, the Wiccans, and the chains that bind them. Heboric speaks to Solara about Bidithel, that the High Mage made dabbling with powers out of his control. They both hear the growing song in the air. The two of them set out in the city but are attacked by two Corbelow Dom's assassins. Heboric defends them, but is wounded after some others attack. Celeria briefly flees. More assassins attack, but ghosts of Raraku save the pair. Solara returns and goes to drag Heboric back to his temple to heal. Sha'ak faces her armor and the battle ahead. As she begins to don the armor, Lorik enters and speaks to her of the dangers of the impending battle. Sha'ak, though, says the whirlwind goddess will protect her, and that there will be a great convergence. Korab arrives then to tell Sha'ak of the Wiccan troops. Lorik is dispatched to tell Corbelow Dom of this, and that the Dogslayer's command will be given to Leoman. Lorik sets out to deliver this message to Corbeau Dom. He speaks to Dom about the impending battle and the whirlwind goddess destruction. However, Dom's command is not to be usurped, and a knife strikes Lorik's back. He defends himself with magic, but he is sorely wounded. Felison Younger speaks to Grey Frog about the knight and a potential ally, then Solara finds them and tells Felison what has happened to Heboric. Nearby, the Seneschal Druids Teast Liason watch as Karsa Orlong rides to the oasis, and they are grateful the warrior did not spot them. But Karsa had already noticed them long before, as they cautiously retreated from his path. Chapter 25. Panarak Oasis. Febril sits on his ridge, channeling his warren and listening to Riraku. Lorik has been dragged aside in the tent. He hears Corbeau Dom dispatch several orders to his lieutenants. Leomin's return is to be blocked, Febril is soon to be killed, Bidithal's spies are to be set upon, and word is to be sent to Adjunct Tavor-Paran. Dom has prepared many wards around his tent, then Grey Frog slices through a nearby tent wall and drags him out. Danger is coming for Corbeau Dom. An assassin is looking for Solara and Felison Younger, but he and his allies are suddenly slaughtered by Karsa Orlong. Karsa intends to find Leoman, but first he asks Felison and Solara where he can find Bidithal, Febril, Corbeau Dom, Camus Rilo, and Heboric. He plans to kill them all. Mathik and his lieutenant Tmoril take up the Book of Drijna, which has been entrusted to them. Some of the clan is guarding Shaik, others are riding to find Leoman. They agree they will see how the battle fares. Heboric feels Febril's sorceress web torn, sees ghosts in the city, and thinks on himself as Treach's reluctant destriant. He leaves his tent. Kalam Mekker takes his acorn and sets out. He battles some assassins who he suspects are talents. He follows a bloody trail into a temple where he finds a young girl, corpses, and Bidithal. Bidithal invites him, saying he is the high priest of the broken and chained, that Kalam can return back to Lazine in chains of his own. Silgar offers him wine. They speak of the Hounds of Darkness, and Bidithal disappears into the darkness. Kalam calls on his Otaro blade and Cotillion comes to help. Karsa finds Heboric's tent empty, Leoman's as well. He goes towards Bidithal's tent where Silgar crawls out, speaking of a demon-like violence inside the tent. Silgar appeals to Karsa, declaring they are both of the House of Chains, that they are brothers. Karsa denies him and kills Silgar, then he goes to follow the trail of Bidithal. Korab Bylan Thenolas makes his way back to Leoman. Korab says Leoman is to replace Dom, and they discuss Dom and his assassins. Leoman then decides to take his men and ride towards Shaik. Kalam briefly thinks on the warren of Shadow and Cotillion, then he sets out to find Corbeau Dom, who calls himself Master of the Talon. Kalam moves towards them and feels a hand on his shoulder, and the voices of a soldier he knows. Kalam then finds Camus Rilo and 2 assassins. He kills the assassins and his acorn rolls free, from which Quick Ben springs. Quick Ben fatally dispatches Rilo, and greets his old friend Kalam. Together they enter Corbeau Dom's tent to see the Lieutenant Hinara's dead on a table, a pearl affixed to her. Corbeau Dom says he has sent word to Tavor that the Dog's Layers are ready to cut down Shaik, and that together they can pacify 7 cities. Kalam knocks Corbeau Dom out, and Quick Ben shares the news of the dead bridge burners. Bidithal thinks on Shaik and the Napin's plans, but is caught by Karsa. Karsa throws him to the ground, and rips Bidithal's genitals off and shoves them in his mouth, choking him. Karsa damns him for his actions and Bidithal dies. Lastara Yil nearly leaves, but Cotillion stops her, saying that their job is near done. That soon the whirlwind goddess would open a massive gate to swallow the oasis, and that she is beginning to be manipulated by the House of Chains. Febril has protected himself and senses what has happened to the Napin, then Karsa finds Febril and kills him. Karsa hears Urigal screaming, being pushed away from the oasis. However, Karsa pushes forward, ghostly chains drawing taut behind him. He does not yield, and the chains will break, or their resistance end. And Karsa moves on. Gamut lies in his cot, in intense pain. He blacks out and wakes up without pain, armored and among soldiers. He finds Grub, who commands him forward. Gamut rides with the dragon-helmed rider, and the Kundro burn tears, and they attack the dog's lairs. Screams are all around, and the sound of battle, but it is distant. Together with the other soldiers, Gamut defends memories, and slays the dog's lairs. He thinks on Tavor and says goodbye. Fiddler and Korik speak about the battle in the morning, and if it will not come. They listen to the song and think the bridge burners have ascended, then the darkness above the oasis changes. Leoman and Mathik speak together about the rising ghosts of memories, the desert's own memories. Mathik will take the Holy Book and ride to the city of Egerton. The Holy Book is history, not prophecy. Leoman rides with Korab towards Shaik. Quick Ben and Kalam are carrying a bound and gagged Korbalodam, and they speak about the song. It's the Tano Spirit Walker song of the bridge burners. Now sanctified by their death, the bridge burners are ascending as a company. However, Kalam is uncertain of the growing darkness. Then Kalam says the hounds of darkness have arrived. The Daragoth descend on the oasis only to meet Karsa Orlong, who steps forward and offers them a warning before wounding one and killing the other. Quick Ben and Kalam watch Karsa's battle, and they decide to leave Korbalodam and escape the oasis altogether. Haborik and Lorik meet together. They speak of the House of Chains' sanctification and entrance into the deck of dragons. They speak more of the crippled god, Karsa, the Daragoth, and the Knight of Chains. Haborik will take Felison Younger and flee with Grey Frog. Lorik goes to find Shaik. He wants to save Felison before the Whirlwind Goddess can claim her. Karsa hunts down the other Daragoth, but Korab and Leoman collide into the Hound by chance and help Karsa with the battle. Leoman says he needs Karsa's help. Pearl leaves the oasis but does not find Lastara, rather he finds Kalam. Kalam hands over Korbalodam and says Pearl owes him. Kalam leaves with hidden footsteps aside him. Pearl then watches the dawn. Chapter 26. Panarak Oasis. Shaik looks inward towards her life as a girl, and then to the Whirlwind Goddess. Shaik sees that the goddess' hatred is insane and out of proportion, then recognizes she and the goddess walk the same path. Shaik then dons her armor and her helm. Lorik walks towards the dog's lair's camp, but it is quiet. Curil de Merlin is waking, and the Whirlwind Goddess prepares to claim it and devour Raraku. He nears Shaik's hill, and Karsa Orlong, dragging the Daragoth heads behind his horse, comes upon the Teast Lyasin. Karsa speaks of those he has killed, and others dead. Karsa says the dog's lairs have been slaughtered. Leoman believes the rebellion can be saved, but Shaik must join them and flee Raraku. Shaik then steps over the hill, and Lorik opens his warren to go to her. The Whirlwind Goddess thinks of her fury, and her once-husband's betrayal. Her husband's drawing of another woman, and then his exile from their clan. The goddess' rage had not died and burns hot. She is ready for her vengeance. Shaik descends down the hill, and she ignores the calls of Karsa and Leoman. Captain Kaneb comes to adjunct Tavor Piran and says that Fist Gamut has died of a brain clot. Tavor steadies herself when hearing the news. She asks for Tambur, but word has come that Shaik has entered the basin and offered a challenge to Tavor. They may duel. After short consideration, Tavor dons her armor and goes. Lorik has entered the goddess warren and finally can see her, an ancient furious amass. As chains slowly come to her body, Lorik tries to shout to the goddess. She is stuck in a web of vines, but then Lorik is stabbed. Korbalodam's talons ambush the goddess and kill her, chains snaking over her fallen body. Lorik is dying, but Osric appears to save him, saying he will bring Lorik home. Shaik stumbles, the Whirlwind Goddess gone from her. Tavor descending towards her, Shaik feels like Felison once more, and she says blood is the chain that can never break. Tavor draws closer, her weapon drawn. Felison and Tavor are the same, and that blood is heavy. So heavy. A sword punches through Felison's chest and she falls down, looking to her sister, wondering why Tavor did not love her. Wondering what their mother would think. Leoman is shocked seeing Shaik killed, and he turns to Karsa. Leoman decides he will ride to Egerton with the others, but Karsa will not join him. They say goodbye. Pearl and Lastara Yil watched Felison's death, and they walk down the hill towards Tavor. They see the Crow clan's standard raised over the Dogslayer's camp, the song crescendoing, and then Tavor greets them. Pearl offers Corbeau Dam to the adjunct, then reports to Tavor that they found Felisin, and she is dead. Tavor asks for certainty, and they offer it. Then she leaves to find her officers. Pearl and Lastara decide to bury Felisin's body, and agree that Tavor looks alone. Tavor joins her commanders, saying to send scouts into the Dogslayer's camp and that Corbeau Dam has been delivered to them. They speak of those ghosts that attacked the Dogslayers, and who was amongst them. Captain Kindly and Lieutenant Pors reports to Tavor. The adjutant then says that the army will ride after Leoman, declaring that the rebellion will be ashes on the wind when they are done. Then Karsa Orlong rides to them, and says the Malazans are not his enemies, and he rides away. Lieutenant Reyno rides forward with Fiddler, and Cuttle behind him. The other squads have not joined. Reyno notices some fleeing warriors and ignores warnings and rides dangerously into a sandstorm. Gessler sees Teist Lyasin riding towards them, and he uses this new munitions crossbow to cause a huge explosion and scare off the Teist Lyasin. Giroud recovers with the other Lyasin, and they speculate about Gessler. They decide to retreat back to their realm. In the sandstorm, Fiddler is knocked off his horse. He almost loses his bag of explosives, but Korab Bylan Thenuelas briefly catches it before returning to the ground. A nearby explosion is massive, and nearly lethal. Fiddler hears a voice and cries out to who he thinks is Hedge. Then Cuttle finds them, and he learns Reyno has died, that Fiddler has lived, and the song of Viraku and his heart are in matching cadence. Fael flees with the remaining Dogslayers only to be caught and killed by Shin. Shin rejoins the Ashok regiment, and they ride to join the others in the rising Viraku. Pearl and Lastara Yil are together after burying Shaik. They are on a high hill and look at the adjunct's army, which has been positioned properly as in the holy desert. A sea rises from the past. The basin will be flooded, and the two speak like normal. Fiddler sits with his squad waiting for the sea, thinking the sound of its song is warm and comforting. Then Quick Ben and Kalam step out to greet him, brothers, and they embrace. Heboric, Solara and Felisin Younger look down from a ridge to the sea, only to learn about Loric's fate from Iskro Pust, who invites them to be his guests. Tesm. Cutter is alone and confused in the Temple of Shadow. Cotillion comes to find him. Together they speak about Absalar, paths worth walking, and Felisin Elder's life. Cotillion says that soon Felisin Younger will come to the temple with others, and then Cotillion charges Cutter with protecting the child. They speak a bit about balance, and then of love, and Cutter knows why Absalar had to leave. Raraku. Karsa Orlong then looks out across the new sea, and pulls out the remains of Sabal. He speaks to her of her past, and then his own. Saying once he believed in only glory, but he has learned that glory is nothing, which cannot be said for mercy. He throws her into the water, and goes to ride west, hoping to be worthy to lead his brothers. Epilogue. The First Throne. An uneasy peace has been reached between the two groups of defenders of the First Throne. Minala inspects a score of her child soldiers as Anrak watches. Finding nothing amiss, she leaves the room before Trull Sengar can attempt to win her trust with his long and unpleasant story. Anrak volunteers to hear the story instead. Manik Okum observes that Anrak seeks distraction because he has felt the death of the woman to whom he had given his heart before stealing it back. The woman who had been so enraged by Anrak's betrayal that her madness had defeated the vow itself. The other clan en masse had been forced to shatter her and lock her away in darkness. And now the whirlwind goddess was gone. Hearing the tale, Trull begins to weep because his friend cannot. Anrak argues that the clan en masse have forgotten that the heart is neither given nor stolen, but surrendered. Manik Okum says that word is without power to the clan en masse. Anrak disagrees, saying his people had changed the word to make it more palatable, and in doing so devoured their own souls. Trull identifies the change as the ritual of Telan before snorting that the clan en masse have the nerve to call Anrak broken. That was a recap of House of Chains by Steven Erikson, Malazan Book of the Fallen, Book 4.